Welcome, dear listener. Thank you for being here, for taking this time to rest, to listen, to allow yourself to be still. In a world that constantly demands your attention, your energy, your constant doing, you have chosen to simply be. This is itself a profound act. Tonight, we will journey together through stories that have transformed lives for thousands of years. These are not mere entertainment, though they may delight you. They are not simple morality tales, though they contain deep wisdom. They are mirrors, reflecting back to you truths about your own nature, about the nature of existence, about the path to genuine peace. You need not strain to understand every story. You need not remember every detail or grasp every meaning. Simply allow these tales to wash over you like gentle waves on a shore. Some will resonate deeply. Others will plant seeds that may sprout months or years from now. Trust the process. Find a comfortable position. Let your body be fully supported. Take a slow, deep breath in and release it with a gentle sigh. Let your eyes close if they wish. Let yourself begin to soften, to release, to settle into this present moment. The journey begins now. Part 1. Tales of Awakening. The Monk Who Forgot How to Meditate. There once lived a monk who had meditated every day for 40 years. His practice was impeccable. He would sit for hours without moving, his mind focused and clear. Other monks looked to him as an example of dedication and discipline. One morning, he sat down to meditate as usual, but something was different. He couldn't remember how to do it. The technique he had practiced for 40 decades had simply vanished from his mind. He sat there confused, trying to recall the instructions, the method, the way he had always done it. Nothing came. Panic arose. Without his meditation practice, who was he? His entire identity was built around being a dedicated meditator, a spiritual practitioner. He went to his teacher in distress. "Master, something terrible has happened. I have forgotten how to meditate. 40 years of practice, and suddenly it's all gone. What should I do?" The old master looked at him with sparkling eyes. "Just sit." "But I don't know how anymore," the monk protested. "Then sit, not knowing how," the master replied. The monk returned to his cushion, bewildered. He sat down, and since he didn't know how to meditate, he didn't do anything. He didn't focus his mind. He didn't follow his breath with concentration. He didn't employ any technique at all. He simply sat, not knowing what to do. And in that not knowing, something extraordinary happened. Without the structure of technique, without the effort of practice, without the identity of being a meditator, he simply was. Present, aware, open. The thinking mind that had been running his meditation for 40 years had finally stopped. Hours passed like moments. When he finally opened his eyes, tears were streaming down his face. He returned to his teacher and prostrated deeply. "Thank you," he said. "For 40 years, I was trying so hard to meditate that I never actually meditated. I was doing meditation. Now, for the first time, I simply am." The master smiled. Sometimes we must forget what we know before we can truly know. Sometimes the technique must fall away before the truth can reveal itself. The monk practiced for 40 years to reach the point where meditation was no longer something he did, but something he was. This teaching applies beyond formal meditation. How much of your life is spent in the effort of doing things the right way? how much energy goes into maintaining techniques, following methods, being the person you think you should be. What might happen if you forgot how to do it all and simply allowed yourself to be? There is a Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The activities are the same, but the relationship to them transforms. They are no longer things you do with effort and technique. They become expressions of being itself. The monk meditated for 40 years to reach the point where he could stop meditating and simply be. Perhaps you too are carrying techniques, methods, ways of being that once served you, but now weigh you down. Perhaps it's time to forget what you know and discover what remains when all the knowing falls away. Let yourself rest now without technique. You don't need to meditate correctly. You don't need to relax properly. You don't need to do anything at all. Simply be here, as you are, without effort or method. This is enough. This has always been enough. The woman who carried stones. In a small village lived a woman known for her kindness and generosity. She helped everyone who asked, gave freely to anyone in need, and never complained about her own hardships. People admired her greatly and often said, "She is so strong, so capable, nothing troubles her." But in truth, the woman was suffering deeply. Each time someone wronged her, each time she felt hurt or disappointed, she would find a stone and place it in a basket she kept hidden in her home. She told herself she was letting go, that she was being good by not responding, by not seeking revenge, by just enduring. But secretly, she was keeping account. Each stone represented a grievance remembered, a hurt cherished, a resentment preserved. Years passed, and the basket grew heavy with stones. The woman's back began to ache from carrying the weight, though she told no one about the basket. She would look at it sometimes in the night, remembering each stone's story, rehearsing each injury, maintaining each resentment. One day, a wandering teacher came to the village and stayed at the woman's home. In the night, unable to sleep, the teacher discovered the basket of stones. When the woman awoke, the teacher was sitting beside the basket. "Tell me about these stones," the teacher said gently. At first, the woman was embarrassed, defensive, but something in the teacher's kind eyes made her feel safe. She began to speak, telling the story of each stone, the betrayal of a friend 20 years ago.
"And where is this friend now?" the teacher asked. "She moved away long ago. I haven't seen her in 15 years. So you have been carrying this stone for 20 years, maintaining the pain of a betrayal by someone who is no longer even in your life. Tell me, does the stone hurt her or does it hurt you?" The woman looked at the stone in her hand and suddenly saw clearly. It hurts only me. She has no idea I've been carrying this. "Then let it go," the teacher said. The woman threw the stone into the river. It disappeared with a splash, and she felt something release in her chest. "Now the next one," the teacher said. One by one, they went through the stones. Some were for people who had since apologized. Some were for misunderstandings that had been clarified. Some were for people who had died. Some were for hurts so old the woman could barely remember the details, only the feeling of having been wronged. With each stone thrown into the river, the woman felt lighter. Her back straightened, her breathing deepened. By the time the basket was empty, she was weeping with relief. "I have been poisoning myself," she said. "I thought I was being virtuous by not responding to hurts, but I was just hiding my pain and calling it strength." The teacher nodded. True forgiveness is not pretending you weren't hurt. It's not being nice while secretly keeping score. True forgiveness is putting down the stone. It's releasing your claim on the debt you believe you're owed. It's choosing to free yourself from the burden of resentment. "But what if someone hurt me again tomorrow?" the woman asked. "Will I just start collecting stones again?" "Perhaps," the teacher said. "This is why forgiveness is not a single act, but a continuous practice. Each time you feel hurt, you will face a choice. Pick up a stone or leave it where it lies. The choice is always yours. But now you know the weight of the basket. Now you know the cost of carrying stones. This knowledge will help you choose differently." The woman returned home to an empty basket. She kept it as a reminder, not of what she had carried, but of what she had released. And when she felt the old impulse to pick up a stone, to remember and nurture a heart, she would remember the weight of the basket and choose to walk on instead. Years later, people still spoke of her kindness and strength, but now there was a lightness about her, a genuine joy that had not been there before. When asked her secret, she would smile and say, "I learned to travel light." This story teaches us about the hidden costs of unforgiveness. The woman appeared kind and strong on the outside, but inside she was maintaining a private museum of hurts. She thought she was being noble by not responding to the injuries, but she was actually harming herself more than any of the people who had hurt her. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean saying that what happened was okay. It doesn't mean reconciling with people who harmed you. It doesn't mean being weak or passive. Forgiveness is simply putting down the stone, releasing yourself from the burden of carrying the hurt. When we hold on to resentment, we think we're punishing the person who hurt us. But as the teacher pointed out, most of the time that person has moved on, or doesn't know, or doesn't care. The stone hurts only the one carrying it. We imprison ourselves while thinking we're maintaining justice. The teaching is not that you should never feel hurt. Pain is a natural response to injury. The teaching is about what you do with that pain. Do you transform it into a stone that you carry forever? Or do you feel it fully, honor it, and then release it? Each stone the woman carried represented a moment in the past, but by carrying it, she kept that past alive in her present. She was living not in the now, but in a collection of old wounds. The weight of the basket bent her back and bowed her spirit. When we put down the stones, we're not saying the hurt didn't happen or didn't matter. We're saying that we refuse to let it continue to hurt us. We're choosing freedom over vindication, peace over righteousness, presence over past. What stones are you carrying? What old hurts have you been maintaining, perhaps without even realizing it? What grudges have you been feeding? What resentments have you been nurturing? And what would it feel like to put them down? You don't have to forgive all at once. Like the woman, you can take one stone at a time. You can start with the smallest hurt, the oldest pain, the one that matters least. Feel what it's like to release it. Notice the space it creates. Then, when you're ready, pick up another stone. The basket will be empty when you decide to empty it. The burden will be gone when you choose to put it down. The choice has always been yours. Rest now in the possibility of traveling light. Breathe into the spaces where stones used to be. Feel the freedom of releasing what you no longer need to carry. Let go, put down, release, be free. The teacher and the angry student. A Buddhist teacher had a student who was brilliant but troubled. The young man had a sharp mind and asked penetrating questions, but he was also filled with rage. He was angry at the world, angry at himself, angry at the teachings, angry at the teacher. For months, the teacher responded to the student's anger with patience and compassion. but the young man's rage only seemed to grow. He would shout during teachings, storm out of meditation sessions, write angry letters criticizing everything about the tradition. One day, the young man came to the teacher's room and unleashed a torrent of abuse. He called the teacher a fraud, a hypocrite, a fool. He said the teachings were meaningless, that Buddhism was just another form of control, that meditation was a waste of time. He went on for nearly an hour, his fury escalating, his words becoming crueler. Through it all, the teacher sat quietly, listening, not defending, not reacting. Finally, the young man was exhausted. He stood there, breathing heavily, waiting for a response. The teacher looked at him with gentle eyes and asked a simple question. If someone offers you a gift and you decline to accept it, to whom does the gift belong? The young man was confused by the question. To the person who offered it, I suppose. Exactly, the teacher said. Today you have offered me the gift of your anger. You have tried very hard to give it to me, but I decline to accept it, so the anger remains yours. What will you do with it now? The young man stood speechless. He had expected argument, defense, counterattack, or at least hurt feelings. Instead, his anger had simply been handed back to him. I don't understand, he said, his voice suddenly small. You are trying to make your anger my problem. You want me to take it from you, to carry it, to be wounded by it. But I cannot help you by accepting your poison. The only way I can help you is by showing you that you don't have to carry it either. The teacher continued, Your anger is like a hot coal you're holding in your hand. You want to throw it at me, thinking it will burn me. But who is actually being burned by holding on to it? The young man looked at his clenched fists and slowly opened them. Tears began to fall. I'm so angry, he whispered. All the time, at everything. It's exhausting. Yes, the teacher said with great compassion. Anger is exhausting. It burns up so much energy, and the tragedy is that underneath the anger is usually pain that needs attention and care. What pain? The young man asked. That's for you to discover. But I suspect if you stop throwing your anger outward and turn towards it with curiosity instead of judgment, you'll find old wounds that have never healed. You'll find fears you've never acknowledged. You'll uncover a young boy who learned that anger was safer than vulnerability. Over the following weeks, with the teacher's guidance, the young man began to explore what lay beneath his rage. He discovered pain from his childhood. He found shame he had never processed. He uncovered fear of not being good enough. Each discovery was difficult, but each one released some of the pressure that had been expressing itself as anger.
Gradually, the rage began to subside, not because he suppressed it, but because he understood it. Not because he was told it was wrong, but because he saw that it was a response to pain and that there were other ways to respond. Years later, this young man became a teacher himself, and when angry students came to him, he would remember the day his teacher refused to accept his gift of rage. He would remember how that refusal was actually the greatest gift he'd ever received. This story illustrates multiple profound teachings. First, it shows us that we cannot make someone else carry our emotions. The student tried desperately to transfer his anger to the teacher, but the teacher simply declined to pick it up. This is a powerful practice, recognizing that we have a choice about whether to accept the emotional content that others try to give us. Second, it demonstrates that responding to anger with anger, to aggression with defense, only escalates the cycle. The teacher's calm refusal to engage with the anger at its own level created space for something different to happen. Third, it reveals the truth that anger is usually a secondary emotion, covering something more vulnerable underneath: pain, fear, shame, grief.
When we can be curious about anger rather than simply expressing it or suppressing it, we can discover what it's protecting, what it's guarding against. The image of the hot coal is particularly powerful. We think our anger harms others, and sometimes it does, but it always harms us. We are the ones burned by holding on to it, rehearsing it, feeding it. The person we're angry at may not even know or care, but we suffer continuously. The teacher's refusal to accept the gift was not coldness or rejection, it was the deepest form of compassion. He refused to enable the young man's suffering by participating in it. He refused to play the role the anger wanted him to play. By simply remaining present and unmoved, he created a mirror in which the young man could finally see his own rage and begin to question it. This teaching applies to all difficult emotions, not just anger. When someone offers you their fear, their anxiety, their drama, their chaos, you can decline to accept it. This doesn't mean being uncaring. It means not absorbing their emotions as your own, not taking responsibility for fixing their internal states, not allowing their disturbance to become your disturbance. And when you find yourself trying to give your difficult emotions to others, making them responsible for your anger, your unhappiness, your discontent, you can recognize that you're holding a hot coal, trying to throw it. You can choose instead to put it down, to examine it, to understand what it's telling you about your own inner world. What hot coals are you holding? What anger, resentment, or bitterness are you carrying, thinking it punishes someone else while it actually burns only you? And what might be underneath that anger if you had the courage to look? Rest in this inquiry. Let the questions settle into your awareness without demanding immediate answers. Trust that understanding will come in its own time. Breathe, release, let the hot coals cool and crumble into harmless ash. Part 2. Stories of Compassion. The Beggar and the Businessman. In a bustling city lived a successful businessman. He had worked hard, built a thriving company, and accumulated significant wealth. Every morning on his way to the office, he would pass a beggar sitting on the same corner. The beggar was old, weathered, sitting on a piece of cardboard with a cup for coins. For months, the businessman hurried past without acknowledgement. The beggar was part of the urban landscape he had learned not to see. But one morning, something made him pause. Perhaps it was the particular quality of light. Perhaps he had slept better than usual and was less rushed. Perhaps it was simply time. He stopped and really looked at the beggar for the first time. He saw not a category, homeless person, but an individual human being. He saw eyes that had witnessed decades of life, hands that had worked and created and touched others, a face that had expressed joy and sorrow. "Good morning," the businessman said. "Good morning, sir," the beggar replied, surprised. People gave him money sometimes, but few asked his name. "I'm Robert," the businessman said. He sat down on the curb next to Thomas. "Tell me your story, if you're willing." And Thomas did. He told of a life that had included marriage and children, work and dreams. He told of the accident that had injured him, the medical bills that had crushed him, the divorce that had broken him. He told of the slow descent from stability to homelessness, how quickly everything can unravel, how invisible one becomes when poverty strips away the markers of social acceptability. Robert listened without judgment, without advice, without the usual discomfort people show when confronted with homelessness. He simply listened, fully present, honoring Thomas's story with his complete attention. When Thomas finished, Robert said, "Thank you for sharing that with me. I'm going to be late for a meeting, but I'll see you tomorrow?" "I'll be here," Thomas said, accustomed to empty promises. But Robert did return the next morning, and the morning after that. Each day he would stop for a few minutes to talk with Thomas. Not about problems or solutions, just ordinary conversation. "How did you sleep? What do you think about the weather? Did you see that news story? Gradually, something shifted in both men. Thomas began to feel human again. The simple act of being seen, being acknowledged as a person worthy of conversation, started to heal something deep inside. Robert discovered that in stopping to be present with Thomas, he was actually giving himself a gift, a few minutes of genuine human connection in a life that had become consumed by transactions and productivity. After several weeks, Robert said, "Thomas, I'd like to help you if you're interested, not because I pity you, but because I've come to consider you a friend. I can offer you a job at my company, nothing fancy, helping in the warehouse. It comes with a modest salary and, crucially, health insurance. What do you think?" Thomas wept, not just because of the offer, although that meant everything, but because Robert had said friend, because he had been seen, known, valued as a human being before being helped. Thomas accepted the offer. He worked hard, grateful for the opportunity, but also genuinely good at his job. His life slowly stabilized. He found housing. He reconnected with his estranged daughter. He began to rebuild. Years later, at a company gathering, someone asked Robert about his relationship with Thomas. "That was very generous of you," they said. "You changed his life." Robert shook his head. "That's not quite accurate. Thomas changed my life. I was the one who was impoverished, too busy to see, too hurried to connect, too comfortable to care. I was moving through the world as if it were just a backdrop to my own story. Thomas taught me that every person I pass is living a life as complex and meaningful as my own. He taught me that success means nothing if it walls you off from your own humanity." He paused, then added, "I gave him a job. He gave me back my heart." This story speaks to the transformative power of simple acknowledgement. Thomas's deepest pain was not poverty itself, although that was difficult. It was invisibility. He had become something less than human in the eyes of those who passed him, an uncomfortable reminder of social failure, a problem to avoid, a category rather than a person.
When Robert stopped and truly saw him, when he asked his name and listened to his story, when he offered his presence before offering his help, that was the beginning of Thomas's healing. Because what Thomas needed most was not money or even employment. He needed to be seen as human, as valuable, as worthy of attention and care. The story also reveals Robert's transformation. He began by thinking he was doing Thomas a favor, but he came to see that he was the one receiving the greater gift. In a life consumed by achievement and accumulation, he had lost touch with simple human connection. He had been looking past people rather than at them, categorizing rather than seeing, moving through the world protected by comfort and status. This teaching challenges us to examine our own sight. How often do we truly see the people we encounter? The cashier who rings up our purchases, the person who delivers our packages, the individual who cleans our buildings. Do we acknowledge their humanity? Do we know their names? Do we offer our presence? We live in a world that encourages us to sort people into categories, useful or useless, successful or failing, worthy of attention or easy to ignore. But every person we encounter is living a life as rich and complex as our own, filled with hopes and fears, joys and sorrows, dreams and disappointments. The practice of truly seeing others is not just good for them, it's essential for us. It keeps our hearts open. It reminds us of our interconnection. It pulls us out of the bubble of self-absorption that wealth and comfort can create. Robert could have just given Thomas money. That would have been something. But by giving his presence first, by sitting on the curb and listening, by returning day after day for simple human contact, that was what created transformation. The job offer came later, rooted in genuine relationship rather than charity, offered to a friend rather than to a category. Who are you not seeing?
Who have you reduced to a function or a category? Who exists in your daily life that you pass without acknowledgement? And what might change if you stopped, made eye contact, asked a name, offered your presence? The Buddha taught that all beings are worthy of compassion, not just those who are likable or successful or similar to us, but all beings. This doesn't mean we must help everyone materially, that's not always possible, but we can always see, always acknowledge, always remember the humanity in each person we encounter. Thomas and Robert both were transformed. One moved from invisibility to recognition, from homelessness to stability. The other moved from isolation to connection, from busyness to presence. Neither change would have happened without the other. This is the mystery of compassion. In giving, we receive. In seeing others, we become visible to ourselves. In opening our hearts, we discover how closed they had become. Rest in this teaching. Consider who you might be overlooking. Feel what it might be like to truly see them, to honor their humanity with your full presence. This is not weakness. This is the path to a heart that remains tender and alive. Breathe, open, see, connect. Be human with other humans. The monastery kitchen. In a large monastery lived a senior monk named Chen, who had been assigned to kitchen duty, considered the lowest, least spiritual of all monastery jobs. While other monks meditated, studied, and performed ceremonies, Chen spent his days chopping vegetables, cleaning pots, and serving meals. Many young monks felt sorry for Chen. "Such a waste," they would whisper. "He has been here for decades, is so wise, and yet he's stuck in the kitchen doing menial labor. He should be teaching, leading ceremonies, guiding students." One day, a visiting master came to the monastery. This master was famous throughout the region for his insight and wisdom. The abbot organized an elaborate ceremony to honor the visitor, with all the monks in their finest robes, incense burning, bells ringing. But after the ceremony, the visiting master surprised everyone. "I would like to spend the day in the kitchen," he announced. "I understand you have a monk named Chen who works there." The abbot was embarrassed. "Master, surely you would prefer to spend time with our senior teachers, our meditation masters, our scholars." "I have come to learn from Chen," the master said simply. He spent the entire day in the kitchen with Chen, watching as the old monk chopped vegetables, washed rice, stirred pots, served food. There was no rushing, no distraction, no sense that he was doing this task while thinking about something else. When he chopped vegetables, each slice was made with complete awareness. When he washed a pot, it received his full attention. When he tasted the soup, he was entirely present with the flavors. There was no rushing, no distraction, no sense that he was doing this task while thinking about something else.
"And where is this friend now?" the teacher asked. "She moved away long ago. I haven't seen her in 15 years. "So you have been carrying this stone for 20 years, maintaining the pain of a betrayal by someone who is no longer even in your life? Tell me, does the stone hurt her, or does it hurt you?" The woman looked at the stone in her hand and suddenly saw clearly. "It hurts only me. She has no idea I've been carrying this." "Then let it go," the teacher said. The woman threw the stone into the river. It disappeared with a splash, and she felt something release in her chest. "Now the next one," the teacher said. One by one they went through the stones. Some were for people who had since apologized. Some were for misunderstandings that had been clarified. Some were for people who had died. Some were for hurts so old the woman could barely remember the details, only the feeling of having been wronged. With each stone thrown into the river, the woman felt lighter. Her back straightened. Her breathing deepened.
By the time the basket was empty, she was weeping with relief. "I have been poisoning myself," she said. "I thought I was being virtuous by not responding to hurts, but I was just hiding my pain and calling it strength." The teacher nodded. True forgiveness is not pretending you weren't hurt. It's not being nice while secretly keeping score. True forgiveness is putting down the stone. It's releasing your claim on the debt you believe you're owed. It's choosing to free yourself from the burden of resentment. "But what if someone hurt me again tomorrow?" the woman asked. "Will I just start collecting stones again?" "Perhaps," the teacher said. "This is why forgiveness is not a single act, but a continuous practice. Each time you feel hurt, you will face a choice. Pick up a stone or leave it where it lies. The choice is always yours. But now you know the weight of the basket. Now you know the cost of carrying stones. This knowledge will help you choose differently." The woman returned home to an empty basket. She kept it as a reminder, not of what she had carried, but of what she had released. And when she felt the old impulse to pick up a stone, to remember and nurture a hurt, she would remember the weight of the basket and choose to walk on instead. Years later, people still spoke of her kindness and strength, but now there was a lightness about her, a genuine joy that had not been there before. When asked her secret, she would smile and say, "I learned to travel light." This story teaches us about the hidden costs of unforgiveness. The woman appeared kind and strong on the outside, but inside she was maintaining a private museum of hurts. She thought she was being noble by not responding to the injuries, but she was actually harming herself more than any of the people who had hurt her. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean saying that what happened was okay. It doesn't mean reconciling with people who harmed you. It doesn't mean being weak or passive. Forgiveness is simply putting down the stone, releasing yourself from the burden of carrying the hurt. When we hold on to resentment, we think we're punishing the person who hurt us. But as the teacher pointed out, most of the time that person has moved on, or doesn't know, or doesn't care. The stone hurts only the one carrying it. We imprison ourselves while thinking we're maintaining justice. The teaching is not that you should never feel hurt. Pain is a natural response to injury. The teaching is about what you do with that pain. Do you transform it into a stone that you carry forever? Or do you feel it fully, honor it, and then release it? Each stone the woman carried represented a moment in the past, but by carrying it, she kept that past alive in her present. She was living not in the now, but in a collection of old wounds. The weight of the basket bent her back and bowed her spirit. When we put down the stones, we're not saying the hurt didn't happen or didn't matter. We're saying that we refuse to let it continue to hurt us. We're choosing freedom over vindication, peace over righteousness, presence over past. What stones are you carrying? What old hurts have you been maintaining, perhaps without even realizing it? What grudges have you been feeding? What resentments have you been nurturing? And what would it feel like to put them down? You don't have to forgive all at once. Like the woman, you can take one stone at a time. You can start with the smallest hurt, the oldest pain, the one that matters least. Feel what it's like to release it. Notice the space it creates. Then, when you're ready, pick up another stone. The basket will be empty when you decide to empty it. The burden will be gone when you choose to put it down. The choice has always been yours. Rest now in the possibility of traveling light. Breathe into the spaces where stones used to be. Feel the freedom of releasing what you no longer need to carry. Let go. Put down. Release. Be free. The teacher and the angry student. A Buddhist teacher had a student who was brilliant but troubled. The young man had a sharp mind and asked penetrating questions, but he was also filled with rage. He was angry at the world, angry at himself, angry at the teachings, angry at the teacher. For months, the teacher responded to the student's anger with patience and compassion, but the young man's rage only seemed to grow. He would shout during teachings, storm out of meditation sessions, write angry letters criticizing everything about the tradition. One day, the young man came to the teacher's room and unleashed a torrent of abuse. He called the teacher a fraud, a hypocrite, a fool. He said the teachings were meaningless, that Buddhism was just another form of control, that meditation was a waste of time. He went on for nearly an hour, his fury escalating, his words becoming crueler. Through it all, the teacher sat quietly, listening, not defending, not reacting. Finally, the young man was exhausted. He stood there, breathing heavily, waiting for a response. The teacher looked at him with gentle eyes and asked a simple question. If someone offers you a gift and you decline to accept it, to whom does the gift belong? The young man was confused by the question. To the person who offered it, I suppose. Exactly, the teacher said. Today you have offered me the gift of your anger. You have tried very hard to give it to me, but I decline to accept it. So the anger remains yours. What will you do with it now? The young man stood speechless. He had expected argument, defense, counterattack, or at least hurt feelings. Instead, his anger had simply been handed back to him. I don't understand, he said, his voice suddenly small. You are trying to make your anger my problem. You want me to take it from you, to carry it, to be wounded by it. But I cannot help you by accepting your poison. The only way I can help is by showing you that you don't have to carry it either. The teacher continued, Your anger is like a hot coal you're holding in your hand. You want to throw it at me, thinking it will burn me. But who is actually being burned by holding on to it? The young man looked at his clenched fists and slowly opened them. Tears began to fall. I'm so angry, he whispered, all the time, at everything. It's exhausting. Yes, the teacher said with great compassion. Anger is exhausting. It burns up so much energy. And the tragedy is that underneath the anger is usually pain that needs attention and care. What pain? The young man asked. That's for you to discover. But I suspect if you stop throwing your anger outward and turn to it with curiosity instead of judgment, you'll find old wounds that have never healed. You'll find fears you've never acknowledged. You'll find a young boy who learned that anger was safer than vulnerability. Over the following weeks, with the teacher's guidance, the young man began to explore what lay beneath his rage. He discovered pain from his childhood. He found shame he had never processed. He uncovered fear of not being good enough. Each discovery was difficult, but each one released some of the pressure that had been expressing itself as anger. At the end of the day, the visiting master bowed deeply to Chen. Thank you, teacher. Today you have shown me what I came to see. Chen was puzzled. I have shown you nothing, master. I have only done my daily work. Exactly, the master said. You have shown me enlightenment in action. You have shown me what it means to be fully present with whatever life offers. You have shown me that there is no separation between practice and ordinary activity, between spiritual work and menial labor. He turned to the assembled monks who had gathered, curious about why a famous master was spending time in the kitchen. You think Chen's work is beneath his abilities, that he should be doing something more important. But I tell you, Chen has achieved what many meditators only talk about. He has brought complete presence into ordinary action. Every slice of the knife is meditation. Every stirred pot is ceremony. Every served meal is an offering of love. When you meditate, the master continued, you sit still and try to be present. This is valuable. But then you get up and immediately lose that presence when you return to activity. You create a division, spiritual practice over here, ordinary life over there. Chen has no such division. His work is his practice is his life. They are one. One young monk asked, "But Master, don't we need to study the scriptures, learn the teachings, develop wisdom?" "Of course," the master replied, "but knowledge without presence is just noise in the head." Chen may not be able to quote scriptures, but he has embodied what the scriptures point to. He has taken the teachings from the realm of ideas into the realm of lived experience. After the master left, the other monks began to see Chen differently. They noticed things they had missed before. How he never complained, though his work was physically demanding. How he never rushed, though meals had to be ready on time. How he treated each task, no matter how humble, with the same care and attention. Some monks began volunteering for kitchen duty, wanting to learn from Chen, and Chen taught them, not through words, but through example. He showed them that enlightenment is not about escaping from ordinary life into some special spiritual realm. It's about bringing complete presence into whatever you're doing right now. One student asked him, "Chen, don't you ever wish you were doing something more important?" Chen smiled. "What could be more important than this? Everyone must eat. Food nourishes not just the body, but the spirit. When I cook with full presence, with care and attention, that quality infuses the food. When you eat what I prepare, you're taking in not just nutrition, but mindfulness. The kitchen is not a lesser place, it's another meditation hall." Years later, when Chen finally passed away, the monastery kept his chopping knife in a place of honor. It reminded them that every moment, every activity, every seemingly mundane task is an opportunity for complete presence. That there is no such thing as unspiritual work, only work done without presence. And the young monks who had once felt sorry for him came to understand that they had been in the presence of a true master all along. This story teaches us about the sanctity of ordinary life. We often divide life into important and unimportant, spiritual and mundane, meaningful and meaningless. We think that some activities are more worthy than others, that some work is beneath us or a waste of our potential. But Chen demonstrates that no activity is inherently spiritual or mundane. What matters is the quality of presence we bring to it. Chopping vegetables with complete awareness is meditation. Washing dishes with full attention is ceremony. Any act, no matter how simple, becomes sacred when done with presence. This teaching is radical because it means enlightenment is not somewhere else, not in the meditation hall, not in the scripture study, not in the special ceremonies. It's available right here, in whatever you're doing right now. The path to awakening is not about escaping from ordinary life into some special spiritual dimension. It's about bringing complete presence into ordinary life. We often postpone living fully. We think, when I finish this tedious task, then I'll be present. When I get to the important stuff, then I'll pay attention. When life becomes more interesting, then I'll show up fully. But life is always now. This moment, this task, this activity, this is it. This is where presence happens or doesn't. Chen had no division between spiritual practice and work. For him, every moment was practice. Every action was an offering. He didn't cook while thinking about meditation. His cooking was meditation. He didn't wash pots while wishing he was doing something more spiritual. Washing pots was spiritual. This is what made him a master. Not his ability to quote scriptures or explain philosophy, but his embodiment of complete presence in the most ordinary activities. He had taken the teachings from his head into his hands, from concept into lived reality. The visiting master recognized this immediately. He understood that watching Chen chop vegetables with complete presence was a more profound teaching than listening to elaborate lectures on presence. Chen's life was the teaching. His way of being was the transmission. How often do we undervalue the people around us because they're not in prestigious positions? How often do we overlook wisdom because it appears in humble forms? The famous master had the humility to recognize a true teacher in the monastery cook. Do we have eyes to see the wisdom in ordinary people doing ordinary work with extraordinary presence? And in our own lives, what tasks do we consider beneath us or unworthy of our full attention? What activities do we rush through, impatient to get to something we judge as more important? What if every moment, every task, every interaction is actually an opportunity for complete presence? Chen's knife is preserved as a reminder. There is no ordinary moment. There is no unimportant task. There is only this moment, this activity, and the question of whether we will show up fully for it or be mentally somewhere else. The path to peace is not complicated. It doesn't require special circumstances or extraordinary opportunities. It simply requires bringing your full presence to whatever is in front of you right now. This moment, this breath, this simple task. Can you find the sacred in the ordinary? Can you bring complete attention to the mundane? Can you make every activity a meditation, every moment a ceremony? This is the teaching of the kitchen. This is the wisdom of the chopping knife. This is the path that is always available, right here, right now. Rest in the simplicity of presence. You need not go anywhere or do anything special. Simply be fully where you are, fully engaged with what is, fully present with this moment. This is enough. This has always been enough. The bridge builder. An old woman lived in a village separated from the neighboring town by a dangerous river. The river was wide and fast, and many people had drowned trying to cross it. The only way across was a treacherous path that took an extra day's journey. The old woman had already crossed the river many times in her long life. She had lost friends to its currents. She had nearly drowned herself on several occasions.
Now, in her 70s, she had finally made it safely to the other side for what she knew would be her last time. She was moving to live with her daughter in the neighboring town. As she stood on the far bank, catching her breath and giving thanks for making it across, a young traveler approached. "Excuse me, grandmother," he said, "is there a safe way to cross this river?" The old woman looked at the young man, then back at the river. She thought of all the times she had crossed, all the fear she had felt, all the friends she had lost, and she made a decision. "Wait here," she told the young man. She spent the next several months gathering stones from the riverbank in the fields. She enlisted the help of other travelers, people from both villages, anyone who would assist. Slowly, methodically, she began building a bridge across the river. People thought she was mad. "You're an old woman," they said. "You've already crossed for the last time. You'll never need this bridge. Why exhaust yourself building something you'll never use?" The old woman would just smile and continue placing stones. "That's precisely why I must build it," she would say, "because I won't need it." The work was back-breaking. Her hands bled, her back ached constantly. Many days she could barely move from exhaustion, but she persisted, and slowly the bridge took shape. After 2 years of work, the bridge was complete. It was simple but sturdy, wide enough for carts to pass, strong enough to withstand the river's force. On the day of its completion, the villagers gathered to celebrate. The mayor from her new town asked her, "Why did you do this? You said yourself you'll never cross this river again. You've spent 2 years of your remaining life building something you don't need." The old woman looked at the bridge with deep satisfaction.
I have crossed this river in darkness and in light, in fear and in hope. I know its dangers intimately, and that's exactly why I had to build this bridge." She gestured to a young mother with a child standing nearby. "She will cross without fear. Her child will grow up knowing there's a safe way between these villages. Young people will fall in love across this river and be able to visit each other safely. Goods will flow, friendships will deepen, both communities will prosper. But more than that," she continued, "I built this bridge because I have been blessed to survive what many others did not. I crossed this river dozens of times and lived to tell the tale. What kind of person would I be if I made it safely across for the last time and didn't turn around to help those who will come after?" She paused and added quietly, "We think the journey is complete when we reach the other side, but perhaps the journey is only complete when we turn around and make it easier for others to follow." A young monk who was in the crowd asked, "But grandmother, isn't each person's responsibility to make their own way? Isn't struggle necessary for growth?" The old woman nodded. "Yes, there are journeys each person must make alone, but why should people die crossing this river when knowledge exists to prevent it? Why should children be separated from their grandparents because of a preventable danger? There's enough struggle in life without maintaining unnecessary ones." True compassion, she continued, is not just helping those in front of us, it's thinking of those we'll never meet. It's making the world a little better for people whose names we'll never know. I may never meet the child who will use this bridge 50 years from now, but she is already in my heart. Years later, long after the old woman had passed away, the bridge stood strong. Thousands of people crossed it safely, merchants and monks, lovers and families, the young and the old. Few knew who had built it or why, but every safe crossing was a testament to one old woman who understood that true success is measured not by what we achieve for ourselves, but by what we make possible for others. And carved in stone at the bridge's entrance were words the old woman had requested, "Built by one who crossed, for those who will cross." This profound story teaches us about legacy and generosity of spirit. The old woman had every reason to rest after her final crossing. She had survived. She had made it to safety. She could simply enjoy her remaining years with her daughter. No one would have blamed her for doing nothing more. But she understood something crucial. Having survived what others did not, she had a responsibility. Her knowledge of the river's dangers, her experience of crossing it successfully, her understanding of the cost of having no bridge, all of this was valuable, and value shared is value multiplied. The question that drove her was not, "What do I need?" but "What will others need?" She had made her last crossing, but countless others would need to cross in the years to come. She could see beyond her own immediate needs to the needs of people she would never meet. This is the essence of true compassion, acting for the benefit of others without any expectation of personal gain. She would never use the bridge. She would never receive thanks from most who crossed it. She would spend her final years in exhausting labor for something that would benefit strangers. And yet she did it joyfully because she understood that this was the completion of her own journey. The story challenges our understanding of success. We typically measure success by personal achievement, by what we accumulate or accomplish for ourselves. But the old woman suggests a different measure. Success is creating conditions for others to thrive. Success is making the journey easier for those who follow. Success is using our hard-won wisdom not just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of all. Her response to the young monk is particularly important. Yes, personal responsibility and growth through challenge are valuable, but not all suffering is necessary or beneficial. Some suffering is simply the result of lack of knowledge, lack of infrastructure, lack of compassion from those who came before. When we have the power to prevent unnecessary suffering, don't we have the responsibility to do so? This teaching extends beyond literal bridge building. What bridges can you build in your life? What knowledge do you possess that others need? What struggles have you survived that you could help others avoid? What path have you walked that you could make smoother for those who follow? Perhaps you've learned hard lessons about relationships, about work, about healing from trauma. Perhaps you've developed skills that others need. Perhaps you've found ways through difficulties that you could teach. All of this is bridge building, using what you've learned to help others. The old woman didn't wait to be asked. She didn't demand recognition or payment. She simply saw a need and had the means to address it, so she did. This is mature compassion, not dramatic or self-congratulatory, but quiet, persistent, focused on benefit rather than recognition. And she did it when she was old, when she was tired, when she had every excuse to rest. She didn't say, "I've done enough in my life." She said, "I have just enough time and strength left to do this one more thing." She used what remained of her life to create something that would outlast her life. This is what it means to live fully until we die, to continue contributing, continue caring, continue working for the benefit of others, even when we no longer benefit personally. To see our own death approaching and ask not what can I still get, but what can I still give. The bridge stands as her monument, more meaningful than any gravestone. Every person who crosses safely carries forward her compassion, whether they know it or not. This is true immortality, not living forever, but creating benefit that lives beyond us.
What bridges will you build? What will you create that will serve people you'll never meet? How will you use your remaining time and energy, however much or little that may be, to make the journey easier for those who follow? The old woman turned around after her crossing. This is the key, not just making it across ourselves, but turning around to help others. Not just surviving, but ensuring others can survive more easily. Not just learning, but teaching. Not just healing, but helping others heal. Rest in this teaching. Consider what bridges you might build. Think about the knowledge and experience you possess that could benefit others. Imagine the people you'll never meet who might benefit from your efforts. This is the path of the bridge builder. This is the way of true compassion. This is how we complete our journey, by making the journey easier for others. Breathe, consider, commit. Build your bridge, whatever form it takes. Part 3. Tales of Letting Go. The Monk and the Butterfly. A young monk was known throughout the monastery for his gentle nature. He would not even kill the mosquitoes that bit him during meditation, carefully moving them outside instead. His teacher worried that his gentleness came from fear of harming rather than true compassion, but said nothing, waiting for the right teaching moment. One spring day, the monk found a butterfly with a damaged wing lying on the meditation hall floor. He gently picked it up and placed it in a small box, feeding it honey water, protecting it from predators, keeping it safe. He became deeply attached to the butterfly, checking on it throughout the day, worried for its welfare. Days passed. The butterfly's wing healed somewhat, but it could not fly. The monk continued to care for it tenderly, proud of his compassion, pleased with himself for saving this small life. After a week, his teacher came to him. "Show me this butterfly you've been caring for." The monk proudly brought out the box. "See, master, I've saved its life. Without me, it would have died." The teacher looked at the butterfly for a long moment. "Open the box." "But it cannot fly," the monk protested. "It will be helpless. Something will eat it." "Open the box," the teacher repeated gently. With trembling hands, the monk opened the box. The butterfly sat on his palm, unable to fly, but clearly alive. The teacher and monk watched in silence. Then the teacher said, "Now let it go." "But master, I told you it cannot survive. I must keep it safe." The teacher's voice remained soft but firm. You think you're saving it, but look at the butterfly. Really look." The monk looked and saw for the first time that the butterfly, though physically alive, had a dullness in its being. It no longer tried to move. It had become passive, dependent, resigned. "You have not saved it," the teacher said. "You have made it a prisoner. Yes, you have kept it alive, but you have taken away what makes a butterfly a butterfly. You have stolen its freedom in the name of protecting it. But it will die if I release it." "Perhaps," the teacher acknowledged, "or perhaps it will find a way to survive that you cannot imagine. Perhaps another creature will eat it, and in dying it will give life to that creature. Perhaps it will live only a few more hours, but those hours will be spent in freedom rather than captivity." The teacher continued, "You think compassion means preventing all harm, keeping everything safe, but this is not compassion. It is control disguised as caring. True compassion sometimes means releasing, even when we fear the consequences. It means respecting the autonomy of other beings, even when their choices lead to outcomes we don't prefer." The monk sat with this teaching, tears streaming down his face. He realized he had been holding the butterfly not for its benefit, but for his own. He had been feeding his image of himself as a savior. He had been controlling the butterfly's life to make himself feel purposeful. "What should I do?" he whispered. "You already know," the teacher said. With shaking hands, the monk carried the butterfly outside. He placed it on a flower in the garden. The butterfly sat still for a long moment. Then, with what seemed like great effort, it managed to flutter its damaged wings. It couldn't fly properly, but it could move from flower to flower. The monk watched, his heart breaking and opening simultaneously. Within an hour, a bird swooped down and took the butterfly. The monk wept. The teacher, who had been watching from a distance, came and sat beside him. "You grieve for the butterfly." "Yes," the monk sobbed. "I feel I've killed it by letting it go." "No," the teacher said. "You've allowed it to be what it was, a butterfly with a butterfly's life, a butterfly's fate. For 1 hour it was free. It felt the sun, tasted nectar, experienced its own existence without your control. That hour of freedom was more valuable than a lifetime in a box." "But I wanted to save it," the monk said. "I know, and this is where we must examine our intentions carefully. Did you want to save the butterfly, or did you want to be a savior? Did you want the butterfly to live, or did you want to prove your compassion to yourself?" The teacher let these questions hang in the air, then added, "Real compassion is complicated. Sometimes it means helping, sometimes it means releasing, sometimes it means accepting outcomes we don't prefer. It always means respecting the autonomy and natural course of other beings, even when that course includes suffering or death." Years later, the monk would tell this story to his own students, and he would say, "I learned that day that love is not the same as control, that protecting is not the same as imprisoning, that sometimes the most compassionate act is to let go, to release, to allow beings their own journey, even when we fear for them. I wanted to save the butterfly, but in truth, the butterfly saved me from the prison of my own need to control, from the illusion that my caring gave me the right to limit another being's freedom, from the mistaken belief that safety is more important than authenticity."
Availability and terms may vary. This story illuminates one of the most difficult aspects of compassion, knowing when to help and when to release. The monk's intentions were good. He genuinely cared about the butterfly, but his care had become possessive, controlling. He was more concerned with preventing the butterfly's death than with honoring its nature. This is a trap many of us fall into in our relationships. We say we're helping, protecting, caring for others, but we're actually controlling them. We justify our control by pointing to real dangers. If I don't manage this, something bad will happen.
We convince ourselves that our intervention is necessary, that without us, the other person or being will fail or suffer. But the teacher reveals the truth. The monk was meeting his own needs, not the butterfly's. He was feeding his self-image as a compassionate person. He was proving his worth through his ability to save. The butterfly had become an object in service of his own psychological needs. True compassion respects autonomy. It recognizes that every being has their own path, their own lessons to learn, their own journey to complete. Sometimes that journey includes suffering we wish we could prevent. Sometimes it includes death. True compassion holds space for these realities rather than trying to control them away. The teacher's question cuts to the heart of the matter. Did you want to save the butterfly, or did you want to be a savior? This distinction is crucial. When we help others to feed our own need for significance, to prove our worthiness, to establish our identity as good people, we're using them. We're not truly serving them, we're serving ourselves. The butterfly's hour of freedom before death was more valuable than a lifetime in a box. This is a profound teaching about the nature of life itself. Quality matters more than quantity. Authentic existence, even if brief and ending in death, is preferable to prolonged existence that is controlled, limited, inauthentic. How often do we imprison others in the name of protecting them? How often do we limit their choices, control their options, manage their lives, all while telling ourselves we're helping? Parents do this with children. Partners do this with each other. Friends do this with friends, always with good intentions, always causing harm. The path of wisdom is learning to tell the difference between genuine helping and disguised controlling. It's developing the humility to recognize when our help is really about our own needs. It's cultivating the courage to let go others to their own journey, even when we fear for them. Letting go is one of the hardest practices. It feels like abandonment, like failure, like not caring. But sometimes letting go is the highest form of love. It's trusting others with their own lives. It's respecting their autonomy even when we disagree with their choices. It's accepting that we cannot and should not control all outcomes. The monk learned that safety is not the highest value. Freedom is. Authenticity is. Living true to one's nature, even if that life is brief or difficult, is more meaningful than a prolonged existence that is controlled, limited, inauthentic. Rest in this teaching. Consider where you might need to let go. Who or what are you holding too tightly? What are you controlling while calling it caring? Who are you protecting in ways that actually limit their growth and freedom? These are uncomfortable questions, but they're essential for developing mature compassion. The butterfly couldn't have told the monk what it needed. It couldn't advocate for its own release. Sometimes the beings we're controlling can't articulate why our help feels oppressive. This is why we must develop deep sensitivity, why we must continually examine our motivations, why we must be willing to let go even when every instinct screams to hold on. Letting go is one of the hardest practices. It feels like abandonment, like failure, like not caring. But sometimes letting go is the highest form of love. It's trusting others with their own lives. It's respecting their autonomy even when we disagree with their choices. It's accepting that we cannot and should not control all outcomes. The monk learned that safety is not the highest value. Freedom is. Authenticity is. Living true to one's nature, even if that life is brief or difficult, is more meaningful than a prolonged existence that is controlled, limited, inauthentic. Rest in this teaching. Consider where you might need to let go. Who or what are you holding too tightly? What are you controlling while calling it caring? Who are you protecting in ways that actually limit their growth and freedom? These are uncomfortable questions, but they're essential for developing mature compassion. The butterfly couldn't have told the monk what it needed. It couldn't advocate for its own release. Sometimes the beings we're controlling can't articulate why our help feels oppressive. This is why we must develop deep sensitivity, why we must continually examine our motivations, why we must be willing to let go even when every instinct screams to hold on. Letting go is one of the hardest practices. It feels like abandonment, like failure, like not caring. But sometimes letting go is the highest form of love. It's trusting others with their own lives. It's respecting their autonomy even when we disagree with their choices. It's accepting that we cannot and should not control all outcomes. The monk learned that safety is not the highest value. Freedom is. Authenticity is. Living true to one's nature, even if that life is brief or difficult, is more meaningful than a prolonged existence that is controlled, limited, inauthentic. Rest in this teaching. Consider where you might need to let go. Who or what are you holding too tightly? What are you controlling while calling it caring? Who are you protecting in ways that actually limit their growth and freedom? These are uncomfortable questions, but they're essential for developing mature compassion. The butterfly couldn't have told the monk what it needed. It couldn't advocate for its own release. Sometimes the beings we're controlling can't articulate why our help feels oppressive. This is why we must develop deep sensitivity, why we must continually examine our motivations, why we must be willing to let go even when every instinct screams to hold on. Letting go is one of the hardest practices. It feels like abandonment, like failure, like not caring. But sometimes letting go is the highest form of love. It's trusting others with their own lives. It's respecting their autonomy even when we disagree with their choices. It's accepting that we cannot and should not control all outcomes. The monk learned that safety is not the highest value. Freedom is. Authenticity is. Living true to one's nature, even if that life is brief or difficult, is more meaningful than a prolonged existence that is controlled, limited, inauthentic. Rest in this teaching. Consider where you might need to let go. Who or what are you holding too tightly? What are you controlling while calling it caring? Who are you protecting in ways that actually limit their growth and freedom? These are uncomfortable questions, but they're essential for developing mature compassion. The butterfly couldn't have told the monk what it needed. It couldn't advocate for its own release. Sometimes the beings we're controlling can't articulate why our help feels oppressive. This is why we must develop deep sensitivity, why we must continually examine our motivations, why we must be willing to let go even when every instinct screams to hold on. Letting go is one of the hardest practices. It feels like abandonment, like failure, like not caring. But sometimes letting go is the highest form of love. It's trusting others with their own lives. It's respecting their autonomy even when we disagree with their choices. It's accepting that we cannot and should not control all outcomes. The monk learned that safety is not the highest value. Freedom is. Authenticity is. Living true to one's nature, even if that life is brief or difficult, is more meaningful than a prolonged existence that is controlled, limited, inauthentic. Rest in this teaching. Consider where you might need to let go. Who or what are you holding too tightly? What are you controlling while calling it caring? Who are you protecting in ways that actually limit their growth and freedom? These are uncomfortable questions, but they're essential for developing mature compassion. The butterfly couldn't have told the monk what it needed. It couldn't advocate for its own release. Sometimes the beings we're controlling can't articulate why our help feels oppressive. This is why we must develop deep sensitivity, why we must continually examine our motivations, why we must be willing to let go even when every instinct screams to hold on. Letting go is one of the hardest practices. It feels like abandonment, like failure, like not caring. But sometimes letting go is the highest form of love. It's trusting others with their own lives. It's respecting their autonomy even when we disagree with their choices. It's accepting that we cannot and should not control all outcomes. The monk learned that safety is not the highest value. Freedom is. Authenticity is. Living true to one's nature, even if that life is brief or...
He continued, I was not serving the painting. The painting was no longer serving me. We were locked together in a dance of perfectionism and fear. I told myself I was waiting for it to be perfect, but I was really just afraid to let it go, afraid to move on, afraid to find out what I would do next. And now? The student asked. Now I'm free, the artist said simply. The fire has done what I could never do myself. It has released me. For 30 years I held on to that painting so tightly that I couldn't hold anything else. My hands were full of that one thing, so I couldn't receive anything new. Now my hands are empty. He stood up, brushing ash from his clothes. Tomorrow I will start painting again, and this time I will finish pieces. I will share them. I will let them go, because I understand now that the purpose of creating is not to possess the creation, but to express what moves through you and then release it into the world. In the following years, the artist created more work than he had in the previous 30. Each piece was beautiful, complete, and released. He no longer agonized over perfectionism. He no longer clutched at his creations. He would complete a work, feel satisfied, and move on to the next. When students would ask about his great lost masterpiece, he would smile. I learned more from losing that painting than I ever learned from creating it. It taught me that no thing, no matter how beautiful, is worth imprisoning yourself for. It taught me that completion is an act of courage. It taught me that letting go is not loss, it's freedom. Years later, on his deathbed, surrounded by students, the artist said, I am grateful for the fire. It looked like destruction, but it was actually salvation. Sometimes life has to burn away what we're clutching before we can open our hands to receive what's next. One student asked, do you regret the 30 years spent on that one painting? The artist considered this. No, those 30 years taught me everything I needed to know, what to do and what not to do. They taught me perfectionism's price. They taught me attachment's weight. They taught me that life is too short to spend it imprisoned by our own creations. And, he added with a twinkle in his eye, they taught me that sometimes the universe has to step in and finish what we're too afraid to finish ourselves. This story teaches about the tyranny of perfectionism and the freedom of completion. The artist began with pure creative impulse, but over time the painting became a prison. He couldn't finish because finishing would mean facing what came next. He couldn't share because others' responses might threaten his sense of the works and therefore his own value. This is a common human trap. We start something with genuine passion, but it becomes an identity, a security blanket, an excuse. We can't let it go because we've invested so much. We can't release it because we don't know who we'd be without it. So we perpetually refine, endlessly adjust, continuously improve, all while calling it dedication when it's actually avoidance. The perfectionism that looks like high standards is often fear in disguise, fear of judgment, fear of completion, fear of moving forward. As long as something isn't finished, it can't be evaluated. As long as we're still working on it, we're protected from the vulnerability of sharing. But this protection costs everything. The artist stopped living while perfecting his painting. He stopped creating new work. He stopped engaging with the world. He narrowed his life to this one thing, and in doing so, he lost the very experiences that would have enriched his art. The fire appeared to be a catastrophe, but was actually a liberation. Sometimes life has to strip away what we're clutching before we can open our hands to receive something new.
The artist's laughter is significant. It wasn't the laughter of indifference or numbness, it was the laughter of recognition, suddenly seeing clearly what had been hidden. In the moment of loss, he saw the prison he'd been living in. He saw how attachment had masqueraded as dedication. He saw how fear had masqueraded as perfectionism. And in seeing this, he was free. The thing that defined him was gone, and he discovered that he was still here. His identity wasn't destroyed with the painting. His creativity wasn't limited to that one work. His worth wasn't dependent on that masterpiece. He was more than what he created. This teaching applies to anything we clutch too tightly, a relationship that's long since ended but we can't release, a career that we've outgrown but we can't imagine leaving, an identity we've constructed that no longer fits, a dream we're still pursuing long after the passion has faded. Sometimes these things need to burn before we can be free. The artist's laughter was significant. It wasn't the laughter of indifference or numbness, it was the laughter of recognition, suddenly seeing clearly what had been hidden. In the moment of loss, he saw the prison he'd been living in. He saw how attachment had masqueraded as dedication. He saw how fear had masqueraded as perfectionism. And in seeing this, he was free. The thing that defined him was gone, and he discovered that he was still here. His identity wasn't destroyed with the painting. His creativity wasn't limited to that one work. His worth wasn't dependent on that masterpiece. He was more than what he created. This teaching applies to anything we clutch too tightly, a relationship that's long since ended but we can't release, a career that we've outgrown but we can't imagine leaving, an identity we've constructed that no longer fits, a dream we're still pursuing long after the passion has faded. Sometimes these things need to burn before we can be free. The artist's laughter was significant. It wasn't the laughter of indifference or numbness, it was the laughter of recognition, suddenly seeing clearly what had been hidden. In the moment of loss, he saw the prison he'd been living in. He saw how attachment had masqueraded as dedication. He saw how fear had masqueraded as perfectionism. And in seeing this, he was free. The thing that defined him was gone, and he discovered that he was still here. His identity wasn't destroyed with the painting. His creativity wasn't limited to that one work. His worth wasn't dependent on that masterpiece. He was more than what he created. This teaching applies to anything we clutch too tightly, a relationship that's long since ended but we can't release, a career that we've outgrown but we can't imagine leaving, an identity we've constructed that no longer fits, a dream we're still pursuing long after the passion has faded. Sometimes these things need to burn before we can be free. The artist's laughter was significant. It wasn't the laughter of indifference or numbness, it was the laughter of recognition, suddenly seeing clearly what had been hidden. In the moment of loss, he saw the prison he'd been living in. He saw how attachment had masqueraded as dedication. He saw how fear had masqueraded as perfectionism. And in seeing this, he was free. The thing that defined him was gone, and he discovered that he was still here. His identity wasn't destroyed with the painting. His creativity wasn't limited to that one work. His worth wasn't dependent on that masterpiece. He was more than what he created. This teaching applies to anything we clutch too tightly, a relationship that's long since ended but we can't release, a career that we've outgrown but we can't imagine leaving, an identity we've constructed that no longer fits, a dream we're still pursuing long after the passion has faded. Sometimes these things need to burn before we can be free. The artist's laughter was significant. It wasn't the laughter of indifference or numbness, it was the laughter of recognition, suddenly seeing clearly what had been hidden. In the moment of loss, he saw the prison he'd been living in. He saw how attachment had masqueraded as dedication. He saw how fear had masqueraded as perfectionism. And in seeing this, he was free. The thing that defined him was gone, and he discovered that he was still here. His identity wasn't destroyed with the painting. His creativity wasn't limited to that one work. His worth wasn't dependent on that masterpiece. He was more than what he created. This teaching applies to anything we clutch too tightly, a relationship that's long since ended but we can't release, a career that we've outgrown but we can't imagine leaving, an identity we've constructed that no longer fits, a dream we're still pursuing long after the passion has faded. Sometimes these things need to burn before we can be free. The artist's laughter was significant. It wasn't the laughter of indifference or numbness. It was the laughter of recognition, suddenly seeing clearly what had been hidden. In the moment of loss, he saw the prison he'd been living in. He saw how attachment had masqueraded as dedication. He saw how fear had masqueraded as perfectionism. And in seeing this, he was free. The thing that defined him was gone, and he discovered that he was still here. His identity wasn't destroyed with the painting. His creativity wasn't limited to that one work. His worth wasn't dependent on that masterpiece. He was more than what he created. This teaching applies to anything we clutch too tightly, a relationship that's long since ended but we can't release, a career that we've outgrown but we can't imagine leaving, an identity we've constructed that no longer fits, a dream we're still pursuing.
Part 4. Stories of Inner Peace. The Warrior's Surrender. There was a famous warrior who had never lost a battle. He was skilled, strategic, feared by enemies, and honored by allies. His reputation was built on his refusal to surrender, his ability to find victory even in the most difficult circumstances. As he aged, he became a teacher of martial arts. Students came from everywhere to learn from him. They expected lessons about technique, about strategy, about the fighting spirit that had made him undefeatable. But the warrior's teachings surprised them. He would sit with students for hours, saying very little, demonstrating even less. When students would ask him to teach them how to win, he would say, "First, you must learn how to lose." This frustrated many students. "Master, you never lost. How can you teach us about losing?" The warrior would smile and say, "I have fought countless battles and won them all, but there is one opponent I could never defeat, one battle I fought every day and lost every single time." "Who was this opponent?" the students would ask. "Myself," the warrior replied. "My ego, my need to win, my attachment to my reputation, my fear of weakness, my resistance to vulnerability. For decades, I fought these aspects of myself, trying to defeat them, to overcome them, to prove I was stronger than they were, and I lost every single time." He continued, "On the battlefield, I was undefeatable because I understood strategy, timing, when to advance and when to retreat. But in the battle with myself, I only knew how to advance, how to fight, how to resist. I never learned the most important technique of all." "What technique is that?" a student asked. "Surrender," the warrior said. "Not surrender to enemies on the battlefield, that would be defeat, but surrender to reality, to truth, to what is. Surrender to your own limitations, your own humanity, your own vulnerability. This is not weakness, this is the highest form of strength." He told them a story. "When I was 50, I finally faced an opponent I could not defeat: illness. My body, which had always been my reliable weapon, began to fail. I couldn't accept it. I fought against my illness the way I had fought against enemies. I resisted it, denied it, tried to overcome it through sheer will. One day, in my rage and frustration, I broke down completely. I stopped fighting. I surrendered. Not to death, I wasn't giving up on life, but I surrendered to the reality of what was happening. I stopped resisting my body's limitations. I stopped demanding that reality be different than it was. And something extraordinary happened. When I stopped fighting my illness, I stopped suffering from it in the same way. The physical symptoms remained, but the mental anguish decreased. I could still have quality of life, joy, purpose, not by defeating the illness, but by accepting it and working with it rather than against it. A student asked, "But Master, doesn't acceptance mean giving up? If you had just fought harder, maybe you would have overcome the illness." The warrior shook his head. There is a difference between acceptance and resignation. Resignation says, "I give up, there's nothing I can do." Acceptance says, "This is the reality I'm working with. Now, within this reality, what actions are possible? What quality of life can I create?" I still did everything possible to manage my illness. I changed my diet, practiced healing exercises, took medicine, but I did these things from acceptance rather than resistance. I worked with my body instead of fighting against it. And paradoxically, this approach was more effective than all my fighting had been. Another student asked, "You're teaching us the opposite of what made you a great warrior." "No," the warrior corrected gently. "I'm teaching you what would have made me an even greater warrior had I understood it earlier. A truly skilled warrior knows not just when to fight, but when to yield. Not just when to resist, but when to accept. Not just how to overcome external opponents, but how to make peace with internal ones. The battles I won on the field brought me fame and honor, but the battle I finally stopped fighting, the battle against reality itself, brought me peace. And I tell you, peace is more valuable than any victory." He paused, then added, "Most of your suffering comes not from your circumstances, but from your resistance to your circumstances. You want reality to be different than it is. You fight against what is. This fighting is exhausting and ultimately futile. Reality is what it is, whether you accept it or not. Your acceptance doesn't change reality, it changes you." The students sat in silence, absorbing this teaching. "So," the warrior concluded, "I teach you how to lose. I teach you how to surrender. I teach you how to stop fighting battles that cannot be won. This is the wisdom my victories never taught me. This is what I learned only through finally laying down my sword, at least the sword I had been wielding against myself and against reality." Years later, when students would reflect on their time with the warrior, they would say, "He taught us how to be strong by showing us how to be soft. He taught us how to win by teaching us how to surrender. He gave us the gift of his victories, but he gave us the greater gift of his acceptance." This profound story reveals that our greatest battles are often with reality itself. We want things to be different than they are. We resist our limitations, fight our circumstances, deny our vulnerabilities. And this resistance creates immense suffering. The warrior's strength on the battlefield came from his ability to see reality clearly and work with it. But in his personal life, he was blind to this wisdom. He tried to fight what couldn't be defeated, the natural processes of aging, illness, change. He confused acceptance with weakness, surrender with defeat. Many of us make this same mistake. We think strength means never yielding, never admitting limitation, never accepting unwanted circumstances. We fight against reality, trying to force it to conform to our preferences, and this fight exhausts us and achieves nothing except our own suffering. The warrior discovered that acceptance is not passive. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means clearly seeing what is, working with it rather than against it, and finding creative possibilities within reality as it exists, rather than wasting energy wishing reality were different. When he stopped fighting his illness and accepted it, he could then work skillfully with it. He could make choices that genuinely helped, rather than choices driven by denial and resistance. He worked with his body instead of fighting against it. And paradoxically, this approach was more effective than all his fighting had been.
This teaching applies to so many areas of life. Perhaps you're fighting against aging, against a difficult family situation, against your own personality traits, against circumstances you cannot change. This fighting creates a layer of suffering beyond whatever difficulty exists in the situation itself. What would it mean to surrender? Not to give up, but to stop resisting. Not to resign yourself to misery, but to accept reality and then ask, given this reality, what is possible? How can I live well within these circumstances? The warrior distinguished between acceptance and resignation. Resignation is hopeless, passive, a giving up. Acceptance is clear-eyed acknowledgement of reality, followed by creative engagement with that reality. One leads to depression, the other leads to peace and appropriate action. Most of our suffering comes not from our circumstances, but from our resistance to them. The circumstance creates one level of difficulty. Our resistance creates additional layers of suffering. When we can release the resistance, we significantly reduce our suffering, even if the circumstance remains unchanged. This is not about positive thinking or pretending everything is fine. It's about honest acknowledgement of what is, followed by working skillfully within that reality. It's about conserving your energy for actions that can actually make a difference, rather than exhausting yourself fighting what cannot be changed. The warrior's final peace came not from winning all battles, but from stopping the one battle that was destroying him, the battle against reality. When he laid down that sword, he discovered a strength he had never known, a peace that victory had never brought him. What battle are you fighting that cannot be won? What aspect of reality are you resisting? What would it mean to surrender, not in defeat, but in wisdom? What energy would be freed up if you stopped that futile fight? Consider this deeply. Feel into your resistance. Notice how much energy it consumes. Imagine what it would feel like to simply accept what is and work creatively within that reality. Surrender to what cannot be changed. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. This is the path to peace. Rest in acceptance. Let resistance soften and dissolve. Be at peace with what is, while remaining actively engaged with what can be. Breathe. Surrender. Accept. Be at peace.
The Garden of Stones. A meditation teacher maintained a beautiful rock garden. Students would often comment on its perfection, every stone placed just so, every line in the gravel raked with precision. The garden seemed to embody peace, harmony, stillness. One morning, students arrived to find the garden in complete disarray. Stones had been moved from their positions. The carefully raked patterns were disturbed. It appeared someone had deliberately disrupted the perfection. The students were outraged. Who would do this? Who would destroy such beauty? They expected the teacher to be upset, to demand investigation, to want the vandal punished. Instead, they found him sitting peacefully beside the disrupted garden, smiling. "Teacher," one student said, "aren't you angry? Someone has destroyed your garden." The teacher looked at the garden thoughtfully. Has it been destroyed, or has it simply changed? "But it was perfect," the student protested. "Now it's chaos." Was it perfect, or had I simply arranged it in a way that matched my preferences? And is this truly chaos, or is it simply an arrangement that doesn't match my preferences? He gestured to the garden. "Look closely. Tell me what you see." The students looked, expecting to see only disorder, but as they looked more carefully, they began to notice things. A stone that had been moved now caught the morning light in a beautiful way. The disturbed gravel patterns created interesting textures. Small plants that had been hidden by the previous arrangement were now visible. "What do you see?" the teacher asked again. "Different beauty," one student admitted. "Not the beauty you created, but
Another kind of beauty. Exactly, the teacher said. The garden I arranged was beautiful because it reflected order, intention, careful placement. This garden is beautiful because it reflects spontaneity, surprise, the unexpected. Both are valid forms of beauty. Both have something to teach. Another student asked, "So you're not going to restore the garden to how it was?" The teacher smiled. "I will tend the garden, as I always do, but I won't try to recreate exactly what was. That moment has passed. That arrangement served its purpose and is now complete. I will work with what is, creating something appropriate to this moment, this day." "But don't you feel attached to your creation? Don't you feel loss?" "I feel what I feel. There was a moment of surprise when I saw the changes, perhaps a brief flash of preference for the old arrangement, but these feelings passed quickly because I hold all arrangements lightly. The garden has always been temporary. Every rainstorm changes it. Every season transforms it. This disruption is simply a more dramatic change than usual." He continued, "If I were deeply attached to one specific arrangement, I would suffer every time anything changed. I would become the slave of the garden rather than its caretaker. I would spend my energy trying to preserve what cannot be preserved, rather than engaging creatively with what is." Over the following days, the teacher gradually reworked the garden, but he didn't try to restore it to its previous state. He worked with the new arrangement, adjusting here and there, creating something fresh that incorporated both the original design and the unexpected changes.
The result was stunning, somehow more alive, more interesting than the previous arrangement. It had a dynamism that the perfectly planned garden had lacked. "You see," the teacher told his students, "the disruption was actually a gift. It forced me out of my attachment to one particular arrangement. It challenged me to create anew rather than just maintain. It reminded me that beauty is not one thing, fixed and perfect, but an endless unfolding process." One student asked, "Are you saying we should welcome all disruptions?" "I'm saying we should not make disruptions into catastrophes," the teacher replied. "Change happens. Unexpected things occur. We can rage against this reality, or we can work with it. We can cling to how things were, or we can engage creatively with how things are." "The garden teaches me daily," he added. "Wind blows leaves into it. Rain changes the soil. Animals walk through it. Each of these could be seen as disruptions of perfection or as participations in an ongoing creation. The choice of perspective is mine." Years later, students would remember this teaching whenever they faced unexpected changes in their lives. They would ask themselves, "Am I clinging to one arrangement? Am I making disruption into catastrophe? Can I see the potential beauty in this new arrangement?" And they would remember the teacher sitting peacefully beside his disrupted garden, already seeing in it not destruction, but possibility, not loss, but transformation, not an end, but a new beginning. This story teaches us about non-attachment and the nature of perfection. The teacher had created something beautiful, but he didn't become imprisoned by his creation. He held it lightly enough that when it changed, he could let it go and create something new. We often create perfect arrangements in our lives, perfect plans, perfect relationships, perfect circumstances, and then we suffer enormously when these arrangements change, as they inevitably do. We see change as destruction rather than as transformation. The teacher's wisdom was in recognizing that the garden had not been destroyed, it had simply changed. The previous beauty was replaced by a different beauty. Both were valid. Both were temporary. Neither was more real or true than the other. This perspective requires holding our creations and arrangements lightly.
We can put effort and care into creating beauty, order, harmony in our lives, but we must not become so attached to our specific creations that we cannot let them evolve and change. The disruption actually enhanced the garden by forcing creativity, by challenging fixed ideas about perfection, by introducing elements of surprise and spontaneity. Sometimes what appears to be destruction is actually an invitation to creation, a challenge to engage freshly rather than just maintain what was. The teacher felt his feelings, surprise, maybe a flash of preference for the old arrangement, but he didn't build a cathedral of suffering around them. He felt them and let them pass. He didn't make the change into a catastrophe or the perpetrator into an enemy. He simply worked with what was. This is the practice. Feel what you feel, but don't elaborate it into drama. Notice your preferences without insisting reality conform to them. Engage creatively with change rather than resisting it. How often do you suffer because something in your life has changed from how you arranged it? A relationship evolves in unexpected ways. A career takes a turn you didn't plan. Your body ages and changes. Your life circumstances shift. Do you see these as destruction of perfection or as invitations to create anew? The teacher's willingness to work with the changed garden rather than trying to restore the previous arrangement is key. He didn't deny the change or pretend it hadn't happened. He accepted it fully and then asked, given this new reality, what is possible? What beauty can be created from here? This is wisdom in action. Full acceptance of what is, combined with creative engagement, not passive resignation, but active participation in the ongoing unfolding of life. What garden in your life has been disrupted? What perfect arrangement has changed? Can you see it not as destruction, but as transformation? Can you work with what is, rather than pining for what was? The teacher said he would work with what is, creating something appropriate to this moment. This is the key, appropriateness to this moment, not preservation of the past. Each moment calls for something specific. When we're stuck trying to maintain what was, we miss the opportunity of what is. Rest in this teaching. Allow your perfect arrangements to be disrupted. Let them change and evolve. Hold them lightly enough that you can let go and create anew when the time comes. Perfection is not fixed. Beauty is not singular. Your life is not one arrangement to be preserved, but an endless unfolding to be engaged with creatively. Breathe into flexibility. Soften your grip on how things should be. Open to how things are. The garden is always perfect, in every arrangement, in every moment. So is your life.
Part 5. Wisdom in Adversity. The Refugee's Bowl. There was once a woman who fled her homeland during a war. She lost everything: her home, her possessions, her community, many members of her family. She arrived in a refugee camp with nothing but the clothes she wore and a small wooden bowl she had managed to grab as she fled. This bowl became precious to her. It was the only physical connection to her old life, the only possession that had traveled with her through the terror and loss. She used it to eat her meager rations. She held it at night for comfort. She protected it fiercely. Other refugees noticed her attachment to the bowl. Some thought she was foolish to care so much about a simple wooden bowl. Others understood, when everything is taken, small things gain enormous significance. One day, a group of children were playing in the camp, and in their exuberance they knocked into the woman's shelter. The bowl fell and cracked down the middle. It was still usable, but it was damaged, no longer whole. The woman wept, not just for the bowl, but for everything it represented: the final breaking of her old life, the loss of even this small comfort, the fragility of everything she held dear. An old man from the camp sat beside her as she cried. He said nothing, just sat with her in her grief. After a long time, she wiped her eyes and looked at him. "I know it's foolish to cry over a bowl," she said. "People have lost so much more." "Your grief is not foolish," the old man said. "This bowl carried all your losses. Of course you weep for it." They sat in silence for a while. Then the old man said, "May I tell you a story about this bowl?" The woman nodded. "This bowl," he said, "has been on an extraordinary journey. It was made by someone in your homeland, perhaps someone you knew. Trees grew from your native soil to provide the wood. Hands shaped it with care and skill. It was used in your old life, in your old home. It held food that sustained you and your family. Then came the war. Amid chaos and terror, you chose this bowl to carry with you. Of all the things you could have grabbed, you chose this. So the bowl contains your moment of choice, your survival instinct, your prioritization of what matters. It traveled with you through danger. It crossed borders. It witnessed your journey. It became the vessel for your new life, modest, humble, but nourishing. It connected your past to your present. It held both memory and sustenance. And now it has cracked. But see, it has not shattered. It still holds water. It can still serve. The crack is not destruction. It is a mark of all it has endured. The bowl is still here, still functional, still yours, but it has been changed by its journey, as you have been changed by yours. The woman looked at her bowl with new eyes. The crack that had seemed like damage now looked like a testament to survival. The bowl was wounded but whole, broken but functional, damaged but still serving. In Japan, the old man said, there is an art called kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold, making the breaks part of the beauty rather than something to hide. The philosophy is that the piece is more beautiful for having been broken. The cracks become part of its history, its character, its unique story. Perhaps, he suggested gently, you could see yourself like this bowl. You have cracked, you have been damaged, but you are still here. You still function. You still hold life. Your cracks are not shame. They are testament to what you have survived. The woman held her cracked bowl, and something shifted in her understanding. She had been seeing only damage, only loss, but the old man had helped her see continuity, survival, transformation. In the following weeks, she kept using the bowl. The crack became familiar. She learned to hold it in a way that prevented leaking, and gradually she came to appreciate it not despite the crack, but because of it. The crack told a story, her story. Years later, when she had been resettled, when she had rebuilt a life in a new land, she still kept that cracked bowl. New friends would see it and wonder why she kept such a damaged thing when she could afford to replace it. She would smile and say, "This bowl has taught me everything important. It has taught me about loss and survival, about fragility and resilience, about being broken and still being whole. It reminds me that I too am cracked but still functional, damaged but still beautiful, wounded but still here. It teaches me," she would say, "that our breaks don't diminish us. They become part of our story, part of our character, part of what makes us unique and precious." And she would think of the old man in the camp who had helped her see her bowl and herself with new eyes, who had transformed her understanding of damage, of brokenness, of survival. This profound story addresses trauma, loss, and the possibility of finding meaning in suffering. The woman had endured devastating loss. The cracking of her bowl could have been the final blow, the thing that broke her spirit entirely. But the old man offered her a different narrative. He didn't minimize her loss or tell her she shouldn't grieve. He sat with her grief and honored it.
And then he helped her see the bowl, and by extension herself, not as damaged goods, but as a testament to survival. This reframe is crucial for healing from trauma. The woman had been seeing herself as broken, ruined, permanently damaged by what she had endured. The cracked bowl seemed to confirm this self-image. Even her last connection to home was now imperfect, damaged. But the old man helped her see that cracks don't negate wholeness. The bowl was still a bowl. It still served its purpose. It was changed, yes, but not destroyed. And the crack itself told a story of survival, of journey, of endurance.
The kintsugi philosophy he mentioned is profound. Breaks can be beautiful. They become part of the object's story, part of its uniqueness. A repaired bowl is not less beautiful than an undamaged one. It is differently beautiful, with a deeper story, a more complex history. This applies directly to human trauma. We often feel that being broken by our experiences makes us less than, damaged goods, permanently impaired. But what if our cracks are actually part of what makes us who we are? What if they're not shameful secrets to hide, but part of our unique story? The woman's journey with the bowl parallels the journey of healing from trauma. First, she had to grieve, truly feel the loss without rushing past it. The old man sat with her in this grief, validating it. Then he offered a new perspective, not to replace the grief, but to exist alongside it. She didn't instantly embrace the new perspective. It took time. She gradually came to appreciate the crack. This is realistic. Healing is not instant. New perspectives take time to integrate. But the seed planted by the old man's story grew over time. Eventually, she could see the bowl's crack as beautiful, meaningful, part of its story, and this helped her see herself the same way. Her trauma was not the end of her story, but part of a larger narrative of survival, resilience, transformation. The fact that she kept the bowl even when she could afford to replace it shows how fully she integrated this teaching. The bowl was no longer just a practical object or a link to the past. It was a teacher, a reminder, a symbol of a hard-won wisdom about the nature of brokenness and wholeness. What breaks have you endured? What cracks do you carry? Have you been seeing them only as damage, as proof that you're broken, as shameful marks to hide? What would it mean to see them as the old man taught, as part of your story, as testament to your survival, as what makes you uniquely you? This teaching doesn't minimize the reality of trauma or the difficulty of healing. The woman genuinely lost everything. The bowl was genuinely damaged. These are real facts. But facts can be interpreted in multiple ways, and the interpretation we choose profoundly affects our healing. You can see yourself as irreparably damaged by what you've been through, or you can see yourself as still here, still functioning, still valuable, carrying cracks that tell a story of survival. Both views acknowledge the same reality, but one enables healing, while the other perpetuates suffering. The bowl never stopped being a bowl. Its fundamental nature wasn't destroyed by the crack. Similarly, your fundamental nature, your basic goodness, your inherent worth, your essential self has not been destroyed by what you've been through. You have been changed, marked, cracked, but not annihilated. Rest in this teaching. If you carry cracks, consider them with gentleness. They are part of your story. They testify to what you have survived. They make you who you are, not less than you might have been, but uniquely you. You are like the bowl, cracked but whole, broken but beautiful, wounded but still serving, still here, still valuable, still precious. Breathe into your wholeness that contains brokenness. You are both, and both are okay.
The Merchant's Lesson. A merchant traveled far from home to attend a great market where he hoped to sell his goods and make his fortune. He had invested everything he owned in the merchandise he carried: fine cloth, spices, craftwork from his region. The journey was long and difficult, but the merchant endured it gladly, dreaming of the profits he would make. Finally, he arrived at the market city, exhausted but excited. He set up his stall with great care, displaying his goods to their best advantage, and then he waited for customers. Days passed. A few people looked at his goods, but no one bought. His prices, which had seemed reasonable at home, were too high for this market. The goods he thought were unique turned out to be common here. What had seemed like a certain fortune was looking more and more like a complete disaster. As the market week drew to a close, the merchant sat behind his unsold goods, despairing. He had nothing to show for his journey, no money to replace what he had invested, no way to pay his debts back home. He was ruined. An old woman, a regular at the market, noticed his despair. She approached him and said, "Young man, you look as though you've lost everything." "I have," the merchant said bitterly. "I came here expecting to make my fortune. Instead, I've lost everything I invested. I don't even have enough money to get home." The old woman nodded sympathetically. "That's a hard lesson, but tell me, what have you learned?" The merchant was startled by the question. "Learned? I've learned that I'm a fool. I've learned that I made terrible decisions. I've learned that my judgment is worthless." "Those are the lessons of self-pity," the old woman said gently. "I'm asking about the lessons of wisdom. What do you actually know now that you didn't know before?" The merchant thought about this. "I know that I should have researched the market before coming. I know that what's valuable in one place may be common in another. I know that assuming success without adequate preparation leads to failure." "Good," the old woman said. "What else?" "I know that I was arrogant. I thought my judgment was better than it was. I didn't seek advice from people with more experience. I let my dreams cloud my practical thinking." "Excellent," the old woman said. "Now, are these not valuable lessons? Are they not worth the tuition you've paid?" The merchant looked at her in confusion. "Tuition? You didn't lose your investment. You paid tuition in the University of Life. You bought knowledge with your money. Now the question is, will you see this only as loss, or will you recognize it as costly but valuable education?" She continued, "Many wealthy people never learn these lessons because they never face real consequences for their mistakes. You have paid dearly to learn what they may never know. You have gained wisdom at the cost of money. This is actually a bargain if you use the wisdom well." "But I'm ruined," the merchant protested. "How is that a bargain?" "Are you dead?" asked the old woman. "No." "Are you permanently injured or ill?" "No." "Then you're not ruined. You're broke. These are not the same thing. Broke is a temporary condition. Ruined is a permanent state of mind. You're only ruined if you learn nothing from this experience and repeat the same mistakes." She looked at him seriously. "You now possess something more valuable than the money you spent. You have knowledge, humility, and a clear understanding of your previous errors. If you use these well, you will make that money back and more. If you waste these lessons in self-pity and bitterness, then yes, you will be ruined." The merchant sat with these words. Slowly, his perspective began to shift. What had felt like pure loss started to look like expensive education. His failure started to contain the seeds of future success. "What should I do now?" he asked. "Sell what you can, even at a loss, get enough money to return home, then rebuild slowly using what you've learned. Don't let this experience make you afraid to try again, but do let it make you wiser about how you try." The merchant did as she suggested. It took him years to rebuild his fortune, but when he did, his success was built on a much firmer foundation than his earlier confidence.
He researched carefully, sought advice, planned thoroughly, and never assumed that his judgment was infallible.
Years later, when he was indeed wealthy, he would tell young merchants this story, and he would say, "The worst mistake I ever made was also the best thing that ever happened to me. It destroyed my arrogance and built my wisdom. I paid a fortune for the education, but it was worth every coin." And he would add, "The question is never whether you will fail. You will. The question is whether you will let failure teach you or destroy you. That choice is always yours." This story teaches about the transformation of failure into wisdom. The merchant experienced genuine loss. His business failure was real, with real consequences. But the old woman helped him see the situation differently, not as pure loss, but as costly education. This reframe is powerful. When we fail, we typically compound our suffering by adding shame, self-recrimination, and catastrophic thinking. We say we're ruined, worthless, stupid. This narrative turns failure into something even more destructive than the loss itself. But failure can be a teacher if we let it. Every failure contains information about what doesn't work, about errors in our thinking or preparation, about areas where we need to grow. This information is genuinely valuable, but only if we're willing to learn from it rather than just suffering over it. The old woman's distinction between broke and ruined is crucial. Broke is a temporary circumstance. Ruined is a state of mind. You're only truly ruined if you let failure define you, if you learn nothing from it, if you give up because of it. Her point about tuition is profound. We're willing to pay for education in formal settings, classes, workshops, degrees. But when life teaches us lessons through failure, we resent the cost. Yet life's lessons are often more valuable than anything we learn in school. The merchant gained practical wisdom that would serve him for life. The teaching is not that we should welcome failure or be careless because it's all learning. It's that when failure comes, and it will, we have a choice about what we do with it. We can wallow in self-pity and let it destroy us, or we can extract the lessons and let it strengthen us. The merchant's eventual success was more solid because it was built on lessons learned from failure. His early arrogance would have eventually led to even bigger failures later. The market disaster, though painful, actually saved him from worse disasters later by teaching him humility and thoroughness. This doesn't mean the loss was meant to be or happened for a reason in some cosmic sense. It simply means that since the loss happened, the merchant could choose to use it constructively or let it destroy him. He chose the former, guided by the old woman's wisdom. What failures are you carrying? What losses are you seeing only as disasters, as proof of your inadequacy, as reasons to give up? What if you could see them, as the old woman suggested, as expensive but valuable education? What did these failures teach you? Not the self-pitying lessons like "I'm worthless" or "nothing ever works for me," but the practical wisdom. What do you know now that you didn't know before? What can you do differently next time? How have you grown, even through pain? The merchant spent years rebuilding. Wisdom doesn't make success instant or easy, but it makes success more likely and more sustainable. The lessons from failure, when properly learned, become foundation for future success. You are not ruined by your failures unless you choose to be. You are educated by them, humbled by them, strengthened by them, if you allow it. The choice, as always, is yours. Rest in the possibility that your failures have been costly but valuable teachers. Honor what you've learned. Use it to build something stronger, wiser, more sustainable. You paid the tuition. Make sure you get the education. Breathe, learn, grow, move forward with wisdom earned through difficulty.
Part 6. The Nature of Suffering. The Sick Man's Question.
A man lay dying of a painful illness. He had been a devoted Buddhist practitioner for many years, meditating daily, studying the teachings, living ethically. Yet here he was, suffering terribly, his body racked with pain despite all his practice. One day, a renowned teacher came to visit him. The sick man looked at the teacher with anguish and asked the question that had been tormenting him. "Teacher, I have practiced for so long. I have tried to live according to the Dharma, yet I suffer terribly. What is the point of all this practice if it doesn't protect me from suffering?" The teacher sat beside the bed quietly for a moment. Then he said, "You're asking the wrong question." The sick man was taken aback. "What do you mean?" "You're asking why your practice hasn't prevented your illness," the teacher explained. "But the Buddha never promised that practice would prevent illness, old age, or death. These are inevitable parts of having a human body. They come to practitioners and non-practitioners alike." "Then what's the point?" the sick man asked, frustration and pain in his voice. "The point," the teacher said gently, "is not that you're sick. The point is how you are with being sick, and that is where I see your practice bearing fruit." The sick man looked confused. The teacher continued, "You're experiencing severe physical pain. This is the first arrow, the pain itself, which you cannot avoid. But tell me, are you adding the second arrow?" "What second arrow?" "The second arrow is the suffering we add to pain through our reactions to it. The anger, why is this happening to me? The self-pity, I don't deserve this. The bargaining, if only I had practiced more. The catastrophizing, this pain will never end. The resistance, I can't bear this, I can't accept this. These are the second arrows we shoot at ourselves." The sick man was silent, considering this. "Without your practice," the teacher went on, "you would be experiencing both the pain of your illness and the intense suffering of all these mental reactions. You would be adding layers and layers of suffering to the unavoidable pain. But because of your practice, you have learned to feel the pain without adding these extra layers." "I don't feel like I'm doing that well," the sick man admitted. "I still have moments of anger and despair." "Of course you do," the teacher said. "You're human. The practice isn't about never having these reactions. It's about recognizing them when they arise, not identifying with them, and returning to presence with what is. I've been watching you, and I see someone who is indeed suffering, but who is not drowning in that suffering. You have moments of peace even amid the pain. You can still smile, still feel gratitude, still connect with others. This is the fruit of your practice." The teacher paused, then asked, "Without your meditation practice, what would your relationship with this pain be like?" The sick man thought about this. "I suppose I would be completely consumed by it. I would be fighting it constantly. I would be angry all the time. I would be terrified. I would make everyone around me miserable." "Yes," the teacher said, "and are you doing those things?" "Not constantly," the man admitted. "Sometimes, but there are also moments where I can just be with the pain without reacting to it so intensely. Moments where I can feel the pain, but also feel other things, the sunlight, someone's kindness, a bird singing. I didn't think that was possible before." "That," the teacher said, "is why you practiced. Not to avoid pain, that's impossible, but to change your relationship with pain, to be able to experience pain without being destroyed by pain, to find space around the pain where other experiences can still exist." The sick man lay quietly, tears running down his face. "So my practice wasn't wasted." "Far from it," the teacher assured him. "Your practice has given you perhaps the greatest gift possible, the ability to suffer without being overwhelmed by suffering, to experience pain without losing yourself entirely to pain. You are learning what the Buddha taught, that pain is inevitable,
But suffering, the mental anguish we add to pain, is optional to some degree. Only to some degree? The sick man asked. We're human, the teacher said. We will suffer, but we can learn to suffer less and differently. We can learn to suffer without adding unnecessary layers. We can learn to be present even with pain. We can learn that we are larger than our pain, that our awareness can hold both pain and peace, both difficulty and gratitude. In his remaining weeks, the sick man held on to this teaching. He didn't pretend the pain wasn't there. He didn't force positivity or deny his suffering, but he practiced being present with what was, feeling the pain without adding catastrophic stories about it, finding moments of peace and connection even in the midst of difficulty. When he finally died, those who had cared for him said they had never seen someone die with such grace, not because he wasn't suffering, he was, but because he had learned through years of practice how to be present with suffering without being consumed by suffering. Additional reflection. The additional reflection. The two wolves. An old Cherokee was teaching his grandson about life. A fight is going on inside me, he said to the boy. It is a terrible fight between two wolves. One wolf is negative. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. The other wolf is positive. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. This same fight is going on inside you and inside every other person too. The grandson thought about this for a minute and then asked his grandfather, which wolf will win? The old Cherokee simply replied, the one you feed. This simple teaching contains profound wisdom about the nature of mind and the power of attention. We all carry both tendencies within us, towards negativity and towards positivity, towards suffering and towards peace, towards contraction and towards expansion. Both wolves live within us. The crucial point is that whichever one we feed, whichever one we give our attention to, our energy to, our belief to, that one grows stronger. If we feed the negative wolf with constant complaint, constant worry, constant focus on what's wrong, that wolf becomes dominant in our consciousness. If we feed the positive wolf with gratitude, kindness, compassion, that wolf becomes dominant. This isn't about denying difficulty or forcing false positivity. It's about recognizing that we have some choice in where we place our attention. When both difficulty and beauty are present, and they usually are, which do we focus on? When something goes wrong, do we rehearse the grievance or look for the lesson? When someone wrongs us, do we feed revenge fantasies or cultivate understanding? Every moment we are feeding one wolf or the other. Every thought, every word, every action strengthens one tendency or the other. This is why practice matters, not to become perfect, but to gradually shift the balance, to feed the positive wolf more consistently than the negative one. The negative wolf will always be there. We don't kill it or eliminate it, but we can starve it by not giving it our constant attention. And we can strengthen the positive wolf by feeding it through our choices, our attitudes, our focus.
Which wolf are you feeding? In this moment, in this day, in your life, which tendency are you strengthening? This question is worth sitting with, worth returning to again and again. Would be angry all the time. I would be terrified. I would make everyone around me miserable. Yes, the teacher said. And are you doing those things? Not constantly, the man admitted. Sometimes. But there are also moments where I can just be with the pain without reacting to it so intensely. Moments where I can feel the pain, but also feel other things. The sunlight, someone's kindness, a bird singing. I didn't think that was possible before. That, the teacher said, is why you practiced, not to avoid pain, that's impossible, but to change your relationship with pain, to be able to experience pain without being destroyed by it, to find space around the pain where other experiences can still exist. The sick man lay quietly, tears running down his face. So my practice wasn't wasted. Far from it, the teacher assured him. Your practice has given you perhaps the greatest gift possible, the ability to suffer without being overwhelmed by suffering, to experience pain without losing yourself entirely to pain. You're learning what the Buddha taught, that pain is inevitable, but suffering, the mental anguish we add to pain, is optional to some degree. Only to some degree? The sick man asked. We're human, the teacher said. We will suffer, but we can learn to suffer less and differently. We can learn to suffer without adding unnecessary layers. We can learn to be present even with pain. We can learn that we are larger than our pain, that our awareness can hold both pain and peace, both difficulty and gratitude. In his remaining weeks, the sick man held on to this teaching. He didn't pretend the pain wasn't there. He didn't force positivity or deny his suffering, but he practiced being present with what was, feeling the pain without adding catastrophic stories about it, finding moments of peace and connection, even in the midst of difficulty. When he finally died, those who had cared for him said they had never seen someone die with such grace. Not because he wasn't suffering, he was, but because he had learned through years of practice how to be present with suffering without being consumed by it. This profound story addresses one of the most common misunderstandings about spiritual practice, that it should shield us from difficulty. Many people come to meditation or Buddhism hoping it will make their lives easier, that it will protect them from pain, that it will create a buffer against life's hardships. But this is not what the Buddha taught. The Buddha didn't say that practice would prevent the first arrow, the inevitable pains of existence like illness, aging, loss, death. He said practice would help us avoid shooting the second arrow, the unnecessary suffering we add through our mental reactions. This distinction is crucial. There is pain we cannot avoid, physical pain, the pain of loss, the pain of disappointment. These come with being human. Practice won't eliminate them. But then there's the suffering we create through our resistance, our stories, our catastrophizing, our self-pity. This suffering is optional, or at least can be reduced. The sick man's practice hadn't failed him. It was bearing fruit exactly as intended, not by preventing his illness, but by changing his relationship to it. He could experience pain without being completely consumed by it. He could find moments of peace even amid difficulty. He could maintain his humanity and connection even while suffering. The teacher's observation about what the sick man was not doing is important. He wasn't making everyone around him miserable. He wasn't drowning in bitterness and anger. He wasn't completely lost in his pain. These absences were evidence of his practice working. Often we only notice what practice has done when we consider what would be happening without it. The sick man realized that without his years of meditation, he would be completely overwhelmed, fighting reality constantly, suffering not just physically, but emotionally and mentally in ways that would be unbearable. The teaching that we can experience pain and other things simultaneously is profound. Without practice, pain tends to consume all of our attention, becoming our entire reality. But with practice, we can develop the capacity to hold pain in awareness while also noticing other things: beauty, kindness, connection, gratitude. This doesn't minimize the pain. It's still there, still difficult, but it's no longer the only thing. Our awareness is spacious enough to hold both pain and other experiences. This is what makes suffering bearable, not that it goes away, but that it's no longer totalizing.
The sick man died with grace not because he transcended suffering, but because he had learned how to be with suffering skillfully. This is a more realistic and perhaps more valuable teaching than fantasies of transcending all difficulty. What pain are you experiencing that you've been thinking practice should eliminate? What if the point is not elimination, but transformation of your relationship to the pain? What if practice is working not by removing difficulty, but by helping you be present with difficulty without being destroyed by it? The second arrow is so automatic we often don't notice we're doing it. Something painful happens and immediately we add layers. Why me? This is unfair. I can't handle this. This shouldn't be happening. What if it gets worse? These mental addings can create more suffering than the original pain. Practice helps us notice the second arrow and gradually stop shooting it. We learn to feel pain without immediately layering stories onto it. We learn to be present with difficulty without catastrophizing. We learn that we're larger than our pain, that our awareness can hold suffering without being overwhelmed by it.
Part 7. Finding Joy. The Dancer's Discovery. In a city lived a famous dancer known for her technical perfection. Every movement was precise, every performance flawless. Critics admired her skill, but audiences, while impressed, often left feeling cold. Something was missing, though no one could quite name it. The dancer herself felt this lack. She practiced harder, perfected her technique even more, but the feeling persisted. She was executing dance brilliantly, but not truly dancing. One day, she saw a group of children playing in a park. They were spinning, jumping, moving without any technique or training, just pure, joyful movement. They laughed as they twirled, shrieked with delight as they leaped, completely unself-conscious and fully present in the moment. The dancer sat on a bench watching them, and something in her chest ached. She remembered being a child, before all the training, when movement was simply expression and joy. When had she lost that? When had dance become about perfection rather than celebration? That evening, instead of going to her usual practice, she went to her studio alone. She looked at herself in the mirror, the serious face, the controlled posture, the disciplined body, and she began to move. But instead of her usual technique-focused practice, she just moved. She let her body do whatever it wanted. She spun without worrying about spotting perfectly. She jumped without calculating angles. She moved without choreography, without plan, without judgment. At first it felt strange, almost frightening. Without technique to guide her, who was she? But gradually something began to unlock. Her movements became freer, more organic. A smile appeared on her face, then laughter. She was dancing the way the children had played, for the pure joy of it. Tears streamed down her face as she moved. She realized she had been so focused on perfection that she had forgotten why she loved dance in the first place. She had been performing for others' approval rather than expressing her own aliveness. She had turned dance into a task, a duty, something to master rather than something to celebrate. In the following weeks, something changed in her performances. She still had all her technical skill, that didn't disappear, but now it was infused with something else: joy, freedom, authentic expression. She was no longer just executing movements, she was truly dancing. Audiences noticed immediately. The technical brilliance was still there, but now it touched hearts rather than just impressing minds. People left her performances feeling uplifted, moved, alive. They couldn't always explain what had changed, but they felt it. A critic who had always praised her technique wrote, She still dances with the same precision, but now that precision serves something larger: joy, truth, the pure celebration of being alive. Before, I admired her. Now she moves me. One day, a young dancer asked her, "What changed? Your technique is the same, but your dancing is completely different." The dancer thought about how to answer. "I saw children playing," she said finally, "and I remembered that dance is play. It's celebration. It's joy made visible." Somewhere along the way, I had forgotten that. I had made dance into work, into duty, into something to perfect, rather than something to celebrate. "But you still practice your technique," the young dancer pointed out. "Yes," the dancer agreed. "Technique is important. It's what allows me to express what I want to express. But technique is a tool, not the goal. The goal is the expression itself, the joy itself, the celebration itself. Technique serves that, not the other way around." She continued, "I was like someone who becomes so focused on learning to write with perfect grammar that they forget to have anything to say. The grammar is important. It allows communication. But it's not the point. The point is what you're trying to communicate. I had perfect grammar, but nothing to say. Now I have both." Another student asked, "How do I find this joy in my practice?" Stop practicing to be perfect. Start practicing to be alive. Stop dancing to impress and start dancing to express. Move because it feels good to move, because you love the sensation of your body in motion, because dance is celebration of being alive in a body. "But won't my technique suffer if I stop focusing on perfection?" the student worried. "Paradoxically, no," the dancer replied. "When I stopped being so tight and controlled, my dancing actually improved technically. Joy creates flow. Flow creates better movement than rigid control ever can. When you're trying so hard to be perfect, you're tight, anxious, self-conscious. When you're dancing from joy, you're relaxed, free, authentic, and that's when the body moves most beautifully." Years later, when people would ask the dancer about her career, she would always come back to that day watching children play. "They taught me what I had forgotten, that perfection without joy is empty, that technique without expression is meaningless, that the point of any art is to celebrate being alive, not to prove how skilled you are. Now I dance," she would say, "not to show people what I can do, but to share with them what it feels like to be fully alive in this moment. That's what turns performance into art, technical movement into dance, skill into something that touches souls."
The distinction she makes is crucial. Technique is important, but it's a tool, not the goal. Like learning grammar to communicate, like practicing scales to make music. The grammar matters, but it's not the point. The scales matter, but they're not the music. They serve something larger, the communication, the music, the expression, the joy. Many of us have lost touch with joy in our activities. We work joylessly. We exercise dutifully. We practice grimly. We've made everything into duty, obligation, something to perfect, rather than something to enjoy and celebrate. And then we wonder why we feel empty even when we're successful. The teaching is to reconnect with the source. Why did you start this activity? What about it originally called to you? Can you find that again? Can you let go of the grim pursuit of perfection and reconnect with the simple joy of doing? This doesn't mean becoming sloppy or careless. The dancer still practiced. She still valued technique. But now her practice had a different flavor. It was serving joy rather than serving perfection for its own sake. The student's fear that joy would undermine technique is common. We think we must be grim and serious to improve. But the dancer discovered the opposite, that joy actually enhances performance. When you're anxious and controlling, you're tight. When you're joyful and free, you flow. Flow produces better results than rigid control. What have you turned into grim duty that could be reclaimed as joy? What activities do you do with such serious perfection-seeking that you've lost touch with why you do them? What would it mean to reconnect with the source, with the original love, with the celebration? The dancer watching children play saw what she had lost. Sometimes we need to see pure, unself-conscious joy in others to remember what we've lost in ourselves. Children at play, animals in motion, anyone doing something with complete present-moment absorption and delight, these can remind us of a more authentic way of being. You don't have to choose between skill and joy, between technique and expression, between discipline and celebration. They can coexist. They should coexist. Skill serves celebration. Technique enables joy. Discipline creates space for joy. This is the path to art that moves souls, to work that sustains you, to a life that feels worth living. Breathe, move, celebrate. Let joy infuse what you do. You are alive. That's worth dancing about. Part 8. Final Reflections. The Last Teaching. An old Zen master knew his death was approaching. His students gathered, expecting profound final words, ultimate wisdom, the secret teaching they had been waiting for. The master looked at them with warm eyes. "You want a final teaching?" They nodded eagerly. "Very well," he said. "Here it is. When you're hungry, eat. When you're tired, sleep. When you sit, just sit. When you walk, just walk. Don't wobble." The students looked at each other, disappointed. "Master, we thought, for your final teaching, something more profound." The master smiled. "More profound than being fully present for your life? More profound than actually living each moment rather than thinking about it? I have spent decades teaching you this one thing in different ways. It seems you still haven't heard it." One student said, "But we do these things. We eat when hungry, sleep when tired." "Do you?" the master asked. "Or do you eat while thinking about work, sleep while worrying about tomorrow, sit while planning to stand, walk while being mentally somewhere else?" The students were silent. "This teaching," the master continued, "is the whole of the path. Everything else is elaboration. Be here, be now. Be fully present for this moment, this breath, this activity. Stop dividing your attention between what you're doing and what you're thinking about." "But surely," another student protested, "we need to think, to plan, to remember. How can we function if we're only in the present?" "There is a time for planning," the master acknowledged, "but when you plan, just plan. Be fully present with planning. There is a time for remembering, but when you remember, be fully present with remembering. The problem is not thinking. The problem is being lost in thought while pretending to be present with life." He continued, "You sit in meditation, but your mind is elsewhere. You eat your meal, but you don't taste it. You listen to someone speaking, but you're already preparing your response. You walk in the garden, but you don't see the flowers. You are physically present, but mentally absent. This is the disease of modern humans." "What is the cure?" a student asked. "The cure is the teaching I gave you. When you eat, just eat. When you sit, just sit. Don't wobble between doing and thinking about doing. Be completely where you are. Do what you're doing with full attention." The master paused to catch his breath. His students leaned in. "You think enlightenment is somewhere else, some special state you'll achieve in the future. But the enlightenment is here, now, in the full presence with this moment, exactly as it is. You are looking for something extraordinary when the extraordinary is hidden in the ordinary, in eating a meal with full attention, in taking a breath with complete awareness, in listening to rain with your whole being." "But master," a student said, "this seems too simple." "Yes," the master agreed, "too simple for the clever mind to grasp. The mind wants complexity, wants secret teachings, wants something it can work toward, achieve, accumulate. But the truth is simple, so simple that people spend lifetimes missing it while searching for something more impressive. He looked at each student in turn. I am dying. Soon I will be gone. And what do I leave you? This simple teaching. Be here. That's all. That's everything.
When I am gone, don't make me into something special. Don't create elaborate rituals in my memory. Just live. Be present. When you eat your breakfast tomorrow, eat it with full attention and know that I am there in that attention. When you sit in meditation, sit fully and completely, and that is the best memorial you could give me. The master was quiet for a moment, then smiled. And now I'm tired. Time to sleep. He closed his eyes and fell asleep. Within the hour, he had died, peacefully transitioning from sleep to death. The students sat with his body, finally understanding his last teaching. He had not wobbled. Right up to the end, he was fully present, teaching when teaching, sleeping when sleeping, dying when dying. No drama, no clinging, no resistance, just complete presence with what was. In the years that followed, when students would ask about the master's final teaching, the senior disciples would say, "He taught us what he had always taught, be present," and he demonstrated it in how he died. He didn't make death into something more than it was. He was tired, so he slept, and from that sleep he died. No drama, no special performance, no clinging to life or resisting death, just complete presence with what was. This is the final story, brings us full circle. After all the elaborate teachings, all the profound stories, all the complex philosophy, we arrive at the simplest truth of all. Be present. That's it. That's everything. The Master's teaching is indeed simple, deceptively simple. So simple that the clever mind dismisses it, thinking it must be missing something. Surely enlightenment requires something more complicated, more impressive, more difficult. But the Master insists full presence with ordinary activity is the whole path. When you eat, be completely present with eating. Taste the food, feel the textures, appreciate the nourishment. When you sit, be completely present with sitting. Feel the body, notice the breath, rest in awareness. Don't let your mind wander away to somewhere else. This sounds easy, but is actually quite difficult. Try to eat an entire meal with complete attention. You'll quickly notice how your mind wants to think about other things, how you go on autopilot, how you stop tasting the food after a few bites. Try to walk from one room to another with complete presence. You'll notice your mind is already in the destination before your body arrives. This habitual absence, this constant mental elsewhereness, is what the Master called wobbling. Being physically in one place, but mentally in another, doing one thing while thinking about something else, never fully present with what is. The Master's death demonstrated his teaching. He didn't wobble even in dying. He was tired, so he slept. From that sleep, he died. No drama, no special performance, no clinging to life or resisting death. Just complete presence with what was. This is what it means to live fully, not to have extraordinary experiences or achieve special states, but to be completely present for ordinary life, to taste your food, to feel your breath, to see the world around you, to listen when someone speaks, to be where you are when you are there. Most of us spend our lives mentally absent, always somewhere else, reliving the past
anticipating the future, lost in fantasies, worries, plans. We miss our actual lives because we're busy thinking about our lives. We eat without tasting. We see without noticing. We listen without hearing. We are alive, but not present for our own aliveness. The teaching is, stop wobbling. When you're eating, just eat. Not eating while thinking about work, or eating while watching TV, or eating while planning dinner. Just eating, fully, completely. When you're walking, just walk. When you're listening, just listen. Don't divide your attention. Be whole, undivided, present. This is not a technique to practice for 20 minutes a day and then forget. It's a way of living. It's bringing complete presence to every activity, every moment. It's recognizing that this moment, whatever it contains, is your life, not a dress rehearsal, not something to rush through to get to the important part. This is it. This moment is your life happening. The Master says enlightenment is not somewhere else, not some special state you'll achieve later. It's here, in full presence with this moment. You are looking for something extraordinary while missing the extraordinary nature of simply being alive, aware, present. This is the final teaching because there is nothing beyond it. All the practices, all the teachings, all the elaborate philosophy, they all point to this. Be here. Be now. Stop wobbling. Live your life instead of thinking about your life. As we come to the end of this journey through stories, we arrive where we began, right here, right now. You have listened to many teachings tonight. Perhaps you will remember some of them. Perhaps they have already faded. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is this. Can you be present? Right now, in this moment, can you be fully here? Feel your body breathing. Notice the awareness that knows you're aware. Rest in the simplicity of just being, just here, just now. This is the teaching. This is the path. This is enlightenment. When you rise from rest, carry this with you. When you eat tomorrow, just eat. When you walk, just walk. When you live, just live. Don't wobble. This is the life you have. Don't miss it by being elsewhere. Be here. Be now. Be fully present for this precious, ordinary, extraordinary life.
Dear listener, we have traveled far together tonight, through story and teaching, through wisdom passed down across centuries and cultures. We have met monks and merchants, dancers and warriors, refugees and teachers. Each story a doorway, each teaching a lamp illuminating the path. But now it is time to set down all teachings, all stories, all words. It is time to rest in the silence from which all wisdom emerges and to which all wisdom returns. You need not hold on to anything you've heard tonight. Let it all go. If something was meant to serve you, it will remain, not in your conscious mind, but in the deeper waters of understanding. Seeds have been planted. Trust them to grow in their own time. What matters now is not remembering, not understanding, not even learning. What matters is simply being here, resting, allowing yourself to be held by the great peace that underlies all things. Feel your body, heavy and relaxed, completely supported. You need not hold yourself up. You need not maintain anything. Just rest, fully, completely, without reservation. Your breath flows in and out, effortless, natural, requiring nothing from you. It has been breathing you all along, will continue breathing you. You can trust this process. You can let go into it. And notice the awareness that knows all of this, that knows the body, knows the breath, knows these words. This awareness is your deepest nature.
It is always here, always peaceful, always whole. Rest as this awareness, not doing, just being, not becoming, just already are. Let everything be as it is, the night around you, the thoughts that drift through, the sensations in your body, the quality of consciousness itself, all of it perfect, all of it allowed, all of it held in the vast acceptance of what is. If sleep comes, welcome it. Let yourself sink into that mysterious realm where consciousness transforms, where healing happens, where dreams process what the waking mind cannot. Trust sleep, trust rest, trust the wisdom of your body to do what it needs. And if sleep does not come, that too is perfectly fine. Simply rest. Let your body be still, your breath be easy, your mind be gentle with itself. There is no failure here. There is only this moment, and this moment is enough. All the beings who have ever lived have faced the night. You are not alone in this darkness. You are held by the same vast mystery that has held every human who has ever drawn breath. Feel this connection, this belonging, this being part of the great human family, stretching back through time and forward into the future. May you be at peace. May you rest deeply. May you wake refreshed and renewed. May you carry forward in whatever way serves the wisdom touched tonight. And may all beings everywhere know this same peace, this same rest, this same deep okayness at the heart of existence. You are safe. You are held. You are home. Rest now, dear one. Simply rest. All is well. All has always been well. All will continue to be well. The stories end, but the truth they point to never ends. It is always here, in the silence beneath words, in the peace beneath activity, in the stillness beneath all movement. Rest in this silence. Rest in this peace. Rest in this stillness. Nothing to do, nowhere to go, no one to become. Just this, just now, just rest. Breathe softly, release completely, sink deeply into peace. The night holds you, the silence embraces you. The great mystery of existence rocks you gently like a mother rocks her child. Sleep now or simply rest. Either is perfect. Both are gifts. May you be blessed with deep peace. May you wake with renewed energy. May you walk through life with wisdom and compassion. Good night, dear friend. Rest well. All is well. All has always been well. All will continue to be well.
Part 9. The Path of Gratitude. The Grateful Prisoner. In a harsh prison lived a man who had been incarcerated for many years. The conditions were difficult: poor food, hard labor, little comfort. Most prisoners became bitter, angry, consumed by resentment for their circumstances and those who had put them there. But this man was different. Every morning he would wake before the others and sit quietly in meditation. Throughout the day, no matter how difficult the work, he maintained a peaceful demeanor. Other prisoners noticed that he seemed somehow content, even happy, despite their shared misery. One day, a fellow prisoner confronted him. "How can you be so calm? How can you seem almost happy? We're in prison. Our lives are ruined. Don't you feel anger? Don't you feel the injustice?" The man paused in his work and smiled gently. "I feel many things, but I have learned something that transforms how I experience even this place." "What could possibly transform this hell?" the other prisoner asked bitterly. "Gratitude," the man said simply. The other prisoner laughed harshly. "Gratitude? For what? For being locked up? For this terrible food? For these chains?" "Let me show you," the man said. "Right now, in this moment, what are you grateful for?" "Nothing," There's nothing to be grateful for. Are you alive? Yes, but are you breathing? Of course, but that's... Can you see? Can you hear? Can you feel the ground beneath your feet? The prisoner paused, uncertain where this was going. The man continued, "This morning I was grateful to wake up. I was grateful for the sunlight coming through the window, even filtered through bars. I was grateful for the water I used to wash my face, even though it was cold. I was grateful for the bread we received, even though it was hard and stale, because it sustains my life." "But those are terrible things," the other protested. "Cold water, stale bread, sunlight through prison bars?" "Yes, they are not ideal," the man agreed, "but they are also not nothing. Before I learned gratitude, I only saw what was missing. No soft bed, no hot shower, no fresh food, no freedom. My mind was filled with everything I didn't have, and I was miserable." Then one day, another prisoner, an old man who has since died, taught me to look at what I do have rather than what I don't. At first, I resisted. It seemed like accepting defeat, like pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. But he explained that gratitude is not about denying difficulty. It's about acknowledging the good that exists alongside the difficulty. The man gestured around them. "This is a prison. That's a fact. It is not a good place. That's also a fact. But here's another fact. I am alive. I have a body that works. I have a mind that can think. I have this moment right now where I am talking with you. These things are also real. When I focus only on what's wrong, I suffer terribly. When I can acknowledge both what's difficult and what's okay, I suffer less. I'm not suffering zero. I'm still in prison, still experiencing hardship, but I'm not adding layers of bitterness and resentment to my hardship." The other prisoner was quiet, considering this. "Try it," the man suggested. "Right now, find 3 things you can be grateful for. They don't have to be big things. They can be small, even tiny." Reluctantly, the other prisoner tried. I suppose I'm grateful that I'm not sick right now. Some of the men are very ill." "Yes, good," the man encouraged. "And I'm grateful that I can still remember my family's faces. Some men here have been so long they've forgotten." "Excellent." "And," the prisoner looked around, "I suppose I'm grateful that it's not raining today. Yesterday the rain came through the roof and everything was wet." "There you go," the man said with a warm smile. "You found 3 things. How do you feel right now?" The prisoner was surprised to notice that he felt slightly lighter, slightly less burdened. "A little better, actually." "This is the practice," the man said. "Not denying what's wrong, but not letting what's wrong blind you to what's okay or even good. Both exist simultaneously. Where you place your attention determines your experience." Over the following weeks, the bitter prisoner began practicing gratitude. It was hard at first. His mind kept returning to resentment, but gradually he noticed a shift. The prison hadn't changed, but his experience of being in the prison had transformed. Years later, when they were both released, the 2 men remained friends. The formerly bitter prisoner would often say, "Prison was hell, but it was also where I learned the practice that saved my life. I learned that even in the worst circumstances, there are things to be grateful for, and that practice has made every day since my release feel like a gift." The grateful prisoner would nod and add, "Gratitude doesn't change your circumstances, but it changes you, and when you change, everything changes." This powerful story teaches us about one of the most transformative practices available to us, gratitude. The grateful prisoner wasn't in denial about his circumstances. He didn't pretend prison was good or that injustice didn't exist, but he discovered that even in terrible circumstances, there are still things to appreciate, still small goods alongside the large difficulties. The practice of gratitude is not about toxic positivity or forcing yourself to feel thankful for things that are genuinely wrong. It's about training your attention to notice both what's difficult and what's okay. Most situations are mixed. They contain both challenge and gift, both problem and blessing. Where you place your attention determines your experience. The bitter prisoner was focused entirely on what was missing, what was wrong, what had been taken from him. This focus created additional suffering beyond the actual circumstances. He was in prison, and he was making himself miserable with his constant focus on all that was wrong. The grateful prisoner acknowledged the same difficulties, but also noticed what remained, what was still okay, what small goods existed even in a bad situation. This didn't eliminate his suffering, but it reduced it significantly. He was experiencing the same external circumstances with less internal anguish. The key teaching is that gratitude is a practice, not a feeling you wait to experience. You don't wait until you feel grateful to practice gratitude. You practice gratitude, actively looking for things to appreciate, and the feeling follows. Starting with 3 things, as the man suggested, is accessible. 3 things you're grateful for right now. They can be tiny. The temperature is comfortable. You can hear birds. Your body is working reasonably well. You have somewhere to sleep tonight. The magnitude doesn't matter. What matters is training your attention to notice what's okay alongside what's not okay.
This practice is especially powerful in difficult circumstances. When everything seems wrong, the practice of finding even small things to appreciate can be genuinely life-saving. It's not about pretending everything is fine. It's about maintaining perspective, about seeing the whole picture rather than only the difficulties. What are you taking for granted that if you lost it, you would desperately want back? Your health? Your mobility, your senses, your home, your relationships, your safety. These often become invisible until they're gone. Gratitude makes them visible again. It helps us appreciate what we have while we have it. The transformation both prisoners experienced was internal, not external. Their circumstances didn't change, but their relationship to their circumstances changed profoundly. This is the power of attention, of focus, of what we choose to emphasize in our awareness. Right now, in this moment, can you find 3 things to be grateful for? Not because everything is perfect, but because even in imperfection, goods exist. Not denying what's difficult, but acknowledging what's okay. This practice, done regularly, can transform your experience of life. Not by changing your circumstances, but by changing you. And when you change, everything changes. Rest in gratitude. Breathe in appreciation for this breath. Notice what's okay, what's working, what's here to be valued. Let this soften your relationship to difficulty, lighten your burden, open your heart. Gratitude is the path to peace, available in every moment, in every circumstance, for those who practice it.
The millionaire's empty bowl. There was a millionaire who seemed to have everything: wealth, property, possessions, status. Yet he was profoundly unhappy, always wanting more, never satisfied with what he had. His mansion felt empty despite being filled with expensive things. One day, he heard about a monk who lived simply in a small temple and was said to be deeply content. Curious and desperate, the millionaire went to visit him. He found the monk in a tiny room with almost no possessions: a sleeping mat, a worn cushion, a simple robe, and a single wooden bowl. The millionaire looked around in shock. "This is all you have?" he asked. "How do you survive? How are you not miserable?" The monk smiled warmly. "Please, sit. I'll make tea." The monk poured tea into his single bowl and offered it to the millionaire. After the millionaire drank, the monk poured tea for himself into the same bowl. "You see," the monk said, "I have everything I need. This bowl serves all purposes: eating, drinking, even sometimes washing. I have a roof over my head, a mat to sleep on, enough food each day.
What more do I need?" The millionaire gestured helplessly. "But I have hundreds of things and I'm miserable. You have almost nothing and you seem happy. How is this possible?" The monk looked at him with compassion. "Tell me, how many bowls do you own?" The millionaire thought, "I don't know, dozens? Fine china, crystal glasses, silver goblets, different sets for different occasions. And when you drink water, how many bowls do you use?" "One, of course." "Exactly," the monk said. "You can only use one bowl at a time, just as I can only use one bowl at a time. The difference is that you own dozens you're not using, and you worry about them. Will they break? Are they valuable enough? Should you get better ones? Each possession you own that you're not using is using you, taking your mental energy, your worry, your attention." The millionaire was silent, thinking about his houses full of things he never used, clothes with tags still on them, collections gathering dust. "But surely having more gives you options, security," he protested weakly. "Does it?" the monk asked gently. "Or does it give you more to worry about, more to maintain, more to protect, more to feel inadequate about when you compare your collection to someone else's?" The monk continued, "I'll tell you what gives me security. Not my possessions, I have almost none. What gives me security is knowing that I can be content with very little. If I lost this bowl, I could drink from my hands. If I lost this room, I could sleep under a tree. I'm not dependent on things for my happiness, so I'm not afraid of losing things. That's true security." "But what about comfort?" the millionaire asked. "Don't you want to be more comfortable?" "I'm very comfortable. My body has adapted to my simple life. I sleep deeply on my mat. I enjoy my simple food. I find this small room peaceful and sufficient. Comfort is not about external luxury. It's about being at home in your circumstances, whatever they are." The monk looked directly at the millionaire. "I think what you're really asking is, how can you be happy? And I'll tell you. You cannot be happy by addition, by getting more and more things. You can only be happy by subtraction, by reducing your needs, your wants, your dependencies. Every desire you have makes you a beggar. You need something outside yourself to be okay. Every dependency creates vulnerability. What if you lose that thing you depend on? Every possession creates worry. What if it breaks, gets stolen, loses value? But when you have few needs, few desires, few dependencies, then you're free, then you're secure, then you're at peace. Not because you have a lot, but because you need very little." The millionaire looked at his expensive clothes, his luxury car parked outside, thought about his houses full of things he never used. "But I've spent my whole life accumulating." "Yes," the monk said with compassion. "And has it made you happy?" The millionaire's eyes filled with tears. "No, I keep thinking the next thing will finally satisfy me, but it never does. I have so much, but I feel empty." "Then perhaps," the monk suggested gently, "instead of adding, start removing. Not all at once, that would be another form of extremism, but gradually, mindfully, ask yourself, do I actually need this? Does this add value to my life, or is it just clutter? Am I keeping this because I love it, or because I'm afraid to let go?" "You might discover," the monk said, "that with each thing you release, you feel lighter, that the emptiness you feel isn't from having too little, but from having too much stuff crowding out space for genuine contentment." The millionaire visited the monk many times after that. Gradually, he began to simplify his life. He didn't give everything away, that extreme didn't suit him, but he began to let go of excess, to reduce his needs, to find sufficiency. Years later, he still had wealth, but he lived much more simply, and for the first time in his life, he felt genuinely content. He would tell people, "I used to think I needed more to be happy. Turns out I needed less stuff, less worry, less striving, more space, more peace, more gratitude for what is. And he kept a simple wooden bowl on his desk to remind the monks teaching, you can only use one bowl at a time, but you can spend a lifetime worrying about hundreds you're not using. This story illuminates the paradox of material wealth and happiness. The millionaire had everything money could buy, but lacked contentment. The monk had almost nothing, but was deeply at peace. The difference was not in their possessions, but in their needs, their dependencies, their relationship to what they had. The teaching that possessions we're not using are actually using us is profound. Each thing we own requires mental energy to maintain, to worry about, to store, to protect, to feel we need to use to justify owning. Our possessions possess us more than we possess them. The monk's security came not from having much, but from needing very little. He was free because he was not dependent on circumstances remaining a certain way. He could be content with very little, which meant he was resilient, adaptable, genuinely secure in a way the millionaire with all his wealth was not.
The teaching about happiness through subtraction rather than addition challenges our cultural conditioning. We're taught that more is better, that accumulation is success, that we need things to be happy. But experience often teaches the opposite. The more we have, the more we want. The more we worry about protecting what we have and getting more. Simplicity creates space. Physical space in your environment, but more importantly, mental and emotional space. When you're not constantly thinking about your things, managing your things, wanting more things, a space opens up where contentment can naturally arise. This doesn't mean everyone should live like a monk. The teaching is about finding sufficiency, the point where you have enough, not deprivation, but enough, and recognizing that enough is probably less than you think, and certainly less than advertising wants you to believe. What are you keeping that no longer serves you? What excess could you release? What would it feel like to need less, to simplify, to find freedom through letting go rather than through acquiring more? The millionaire's transformation came through gradual simplification, not dramatic rejection of all he had. This is wisdom, finding what's right for you, not swinging to extremes, but moving in the direction of less, of simpler, of more space and less clutter. Consider, you can only use one bowl at a time. You can only wear one outfit at a time. You can only live in one room at a time. How much of what you own are you actually using? How much is just creating worry and maintenance obligations? True wealth is not having many possessions. True wealth is needing few. True security is not in accumulation. True security is in the resilience that comes from being content with little. Rest in this teaching. Consider what you could release, what would lighten your burden, what's cluttering your life without adding value. Feel the freedom that comes from needing less, from finding sufficiency, from discovering that you already have enough. One bowl is enough when you know how to appreciate it fully. One life is enough when you know how to live it fully. Presence and gratitude create abundance that no amount of accumulation ever can. Breathe into simplicity. Rest in sufficiency. Be at peace with enough.
No, the teacher said. There is no such space. You are always observed by the universe, by consciousness itself, by your own awareness. The question is whether you live in alignment with your values only when externally observed, or whether you carry your integrity with you always. She looked at the third student. You may now release the bird. The student opened the cage right there in the teacher's presence. The bird flew away. I release it now, she said, not because no one can see, but witnessed by everyone, including myself. My action is the same whether observed by others or not, because I am always observed by my own consciousness. The teacher nodded with deep satisfaction. This is wisdom. This is integrity. This is freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want when no one is watching, but the freedom that comes from always living in alignment with your deepest values, regardless of who sees. Over the years, the three students took different paths. The first two often struggled with ethical decisions, calculating whether anyone would know, whether they would be caught, whether they could get away with something. Their lives were filled with stress about maintaining appearances. The third student lived with remarkable peace. She didn't have to remember what lies she had told to whom, didn't have to worry about being discovered, didn't have to maintain different versions of herself for different audiences. She was the same person in public and in private because she understood that she was always witnessed by the most important observer, her own conscious awareness. People would comment on her integrity, her trustworthiness, her peace. When asked her secret, she would say, "I live as if I am always seen, because I am. I see myself, and I must live with my own consciousness every moment of every day. External witnesses come and go, but I am always here with myself, so I strive to be someone I can live with peacefully." And she would add with a smile, "Also, it's so much simpler. One version of yourself is much easier to maintain than multiple versions. Truth is lighter to carry than deception. Integrity is more peaceful than calculating what you can get away with." This teaching cuts to the heart of authentic spiritual practice. True ethics are not about following rules because you're being watched. They're about recognizing that you are always witnessed by your own consciousness, and that living with yourself is either peaceful or tormented based on your alignment with your values. The first two students were still operating from external motivation. They would do the right thing when observed, but saw no one watching as an opportunity to do something different. This is immature ethics, rule following that hasn't been internalized. The third student recognized a deeper truth. You cannot hide from yourself. Wherever you go, you are there. Whatever you do, you witness. Your own consciousness is an inescapable observer, and living with a consciousness that has witnessed you betraying your values is hell, while living with a consciousness that has witnessed you honoring your values is peace. This teaching is about integrity, being the same person whether observed by others or not because you're perfect or never struggle, but because you recognize that the witness of your own awareness matters more than any external observer. When we understand this deeply, ethics become simple. We don't have to remember what lies we told to whom. We don't have to maintain different personas for different audiences. We don't have to calculate what we can get away with. We simply live according to our values because we must live with ourselves. The peace that comes from this is immense. No worry about being discovered, no stress of maintaining false fronts, no exhaustion from managing multiple versions of yourself, just the simplicity and freedom of being authentically yourself, the same in public and in private. This doesn't mean you share everything with everyone or that you have no boundaries. It means your actions align with your values whether others see them or not. You don't do one thing when watched and another when alone. You carry your integrity with you always because you recognize you're always accompanied by the witness of your own consciousness. What would change in your life if you truly internalized this teaching? If you recognized that you are always seen by yourself, always witnessed by your own awareness? Would you make different choices? Would you live differently? The student who kept the bird caged until she understood the teaching demonstrated something crucial. It's better to pause, to question, to sit with uncertainty than to rush ahead with the wrong understanding. Sometimes not acting is wiser than acting without understanding. Consider this in your own life. Where are you maintaining different versions of yourself? Where do you act one way when observed and another when alone? What would it mean to live with complete integrity, the same whether witnessed by others or not? The freedom is not in doing whatever you want when no one is watching. The freedom is in living so aligned with your values that it doesn't matter who's watching. You are the same person, living with integrity, at peace with the witness of your own consciousness. Rest in this teaching. Feel what it would be like to live with complete integrity, to be the same person in all circumstances, to carry your values with you always. Notice the peace that comes from this, the simplicity, the freedom. You are always seen, by you, and that witness is the one that matters most. Live in a way that allows you to be at peace with that eternal observer, your own conscious awareness. Breathe into integrity. Rest in alignment with your deepest values. Be free through authenticity, through being fully yourself in all circumstances. This is the path of peace. This is the way of freedom. This is wisdom in action. If I hadn't practiced, I would be angry all the time. I would be terrified. I would make everyone around me miserable. Yes, the teacher said. And are you doing those things? Not constantly, the man admitted. Sometimes, but there are also moments where I can just be with the pain without reacting to it so intensely. Moments where I can feel the pain, but also feel other things. The sunlight, someone's kindness, a bird singing. I didn't think that was possible before. That, the teacher said, is why you practiced. Not to avoid pain, that's impossible, but to change your relationship with pain. To be able to experience pain without being destroyed by pain. To find space around the pain where other experiences can still exist. The sick man lay quietly, tears running down his face. So my practice wasn't wasted. Far from it, the teacher assured him. Your practice has given you perhaps the greatest gift possible, the ability to suffer without being overwhelmed by suffering, to experience pain without losing yourself entirely to pain. You're learning what the Buddha taught, that pain is inevitable, but suffering, the mental anguish we add to pain, is optional to some degree. Only to some degree? The sick man asked. We're human, we will suffer. But we can learn to suffer less and differently. We can learn to suffer without adding unnecessary layers. We can learn to be present even with pain. We can learn that we are larger than our pain, that our awareness can hold both pain and peace, both difficulty and gratitude.
In his remaining weeks, the sick man held on to this teaching. He didn't pretend the pain wasn't there. He didn't force positivity or deny his suffering, but he practiced being present with what was, feeling the pain without adding catastrophic stories about it, finding moments of peace and connection even in the midst of difficulty. When he finally died, those who had cared for him said they had never seen someone die with such grace. Not because he wasn't suffering, he was, but because he had learned through years of practice how to be present with suffering without being consumed by it. This profound story addresses one of the most common misunderstandings about spiritual practice, that it should shield us from difficulty. Many people come to meditation or Buddhism hoping it will make their lives easier, that it will protect them from pain, that it will create a buffer against life's hardships. But this is not what the Buddha taught. The Buddha didn't say that practice would prevent the first arrow, the inevitable pains of existence like illness, aging, loss, death. He said practice would help us avoid shooting the second arrow, the unnecessary suffering we add through our mental reactions. This distinction is crucial. There is pain we cannot avoid, physical pain, the pain of loss, the pain of disappointment. These come with being human. Practice won't eliminate them. But then there's the suffering we create through our resistance, our stories, our catastrophizing, our self-pity. This suffering is optional, or at least can be reduced. The sick man's practice hadn't failed him. It was bearing fruit exactly as intended, not by preventing his illness, but by changing his relationship to it. He could experience pain without being completely consumed by it. He could find moments of peace even amid difficulty. He could maintain his humanity and connection even while suffering. The teacher's observation about what the sick man was not doing is important. He wasn't making everyone around him miserable. He wasn't drowning in bitterness and anger. He wasn't completely lost in his pain. These absences were evidence of his practice working. Often we only notice what practice has done when we consider what would be happening without it. The sick man realized that without his years of meditation, he would be completely overwhelmed, fighting reality constantly, suffering not just physically but emotionally and mentally in ways that would be unbearable. The teaching that we can experience pain and other things simultaneously is profound. Without practice, pain tends to consume all of our attention, becoming our entire reality. But with practice, we can develop the capacity to hold pain in awareness while also noticing other things: beauty, kindness, connection, gratitude. This doesn't minimize the pain. It's still there, still difficult, but it's no longer the only thing. Our awareness is spacious enough to hold both pain and other experiences. This is what makes suffering bearable, not that it goes away, but that it's no longer totalizing. The sick man's death with grace, not because he transcended suffering, but because he had learned how to be with suffering skillfully. This is a more realistic and perhaps more valuable teaching than fantasies of transcending all difficulty. What pain are you experiencing that you've been thinking practice should eliminate? What if the point is not elimination, but transformation of your relationship to the pain? What if practice is working not by removing difficulty, but by helping you be present with difficulty without being destroyed by it? The second arrow is so automatic we often don't notice we're doing it. Something painful happens, and immediately we add layers. Why me? This is unfair. I can't handle this. This shouldn't be happening. What if it gets worse? These mental additions can create more suffering than the original pain. Practice helps us notice the second arrow and gradually stop shooting it. We learn to feel pain without immediately layering stories onto it. We learn to be present with difficulty without catastrophizing. We learn that we're larger than our pain, that our awareness can hold suffering without being overwhelmed by it. This is not easy. It's not about being stoic or pretending pain doesn't hurt. It's about honest acknowledgement of pain combined with skillful response rather than reactive suffering. Rest in this teaching. Whatever pain you're carrying, practice being with it without adding unnecessary layers. Feel it clearly, but notice also what else is present. Notice that you are the awareness holding the pain, not the pain itself. This doesn't make pain go away, but it transforms suffering, and that transformation is the true fruit of practice. Breathe, be present, hold it all with compassion. This is the path.
Concluding wisdom. As we truly come to the end of this long journey together, let us remember, all these stories, all these teachings, all these words have been pointing to something very simple. Not easy, but simple. Be present, be kind, let go, accept what is, feed the positive wolf. Don't shoot the second arrow. Hold things lightly. See your brokenness as part of your beauty. Recognize that suffering comes from resistance and peace comes from acceptance. Know that you are more than your thoughts, more than your pain, more than your circumstances. You have within you both wolves. You have within you the capacity for both suffering and peace. Which you experience more depends significantly on where you place your attention, what you feed, how you respond to what life brings. Life will bring difficulty. This is guaranteed. Pain, loss, disappointment, illness, aging, death. These are not failures of practice. They are not punishments. They are simply the nature of existence in a human body.
The practice is not to avoid these realities, but to meet them with wisdom, with compassion, with presence. And life will also bring beauty, joy, connection, love, moments of grace. These too are guaranteed if you have eyes to see them. Often they exist right alongside the difficulty. The question is, will you notice them? Will you let them in? Or will you be so consumed by what's wrong that you miss what's right? The path to peace is not complicated, though it requires commitment. It's simply this: be present with what is, without adding layers of story and resistance. Feel what you feel, but don't elaborate it into drama. Accept what cannot be changed, while engaging creatively with what can be. Hold everything, including your own life, lightly, knowing that all things pass. Feed the wolf of peace, compassion, gratitude, more than the wolf of resentment, fear, and grasping. This is not a path that ends. It's a path you walk daily, moment by moment, for the rest of your life. Some days you'll walk it well. Some days you'll forget everything and get lost in reactivity, in story, in resistance. This is okay. This is human. The practice is simply to keep returning, keep beginning again, keep choosing presence over absence, acceptance over resistance, compassion over judgment. You have listened to many stories tonight. Let them settle into your being like seeds. Trust them to grow in their own time and way. You need not consciously remember them. If something was meant to serve you, it will arise when needed. What matters most is not what you remember, but how you live. Not what you know, but how you be. Not what you achieve, but how you relate to whatever you experience. May these teachings serve you. May they support your journey toward greater peace, greater wisdom, greater compassion. May they help you suffer less and live more fully. May they remind you again and again that you are more than you think you are, that peace is possible, that this moment, whatever it contains, is workable. You are not broken. You are not wrong. You are not failing. You are a human being, doing your best, learning as you go, growing through both success and failure, both joy and sorrow. This is enough. You are enough. Rest now in this knowing. Rest in the peace that underlies all things. Rest in the great mystery of existence that holds us all. May you be at peace. May you be free from unnecessary suffering. May you know the joy that is available in every moment. May you walk this path with courage, with compassion, with wisdom. And may all beings everywhere know this same peace, this same freedom, this same deep okayness at the heart of all things. Good night, dear traveler. Rest well. Wake refreshed. Live fully. The stories are complete. The teachings have been offered. Now simply rest. All is well. All has always been well. All will always be well. Breathe. Release. Be at peace. Om Mani Padme Hum. May all beings be free.
And if you are still awake, still listening, that too is perfectly fine. There is no wrong way to be with these teachings. Simply remain here in this peaceful space, breathing gently, resting as you are able. Your body knows what it needs. Trust it. Your mind will settle in its own time. Allow it. Your heart is finding its natural rhythm. Let it. Everything in its own time. Everything in its own way. All things unfolding as they must. You are exactly where you need to be. This moment is exactly as it should be.
You are enough, just as you are. Rest in this knowing. Breathe in peace. Breathe out release. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be at peace. May all beings be free, including you, especially you. Rest now, deeply, completely, without hesitation or holding back. The universe supports you. Life carries you. Existence itself embraces you. You are home. You have always been home. You will always be home. Rest. Release. Be at peace. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace.